Chapter 1817. Portia opened the door angrily. "Boss!" Portia's first voice was very loud. However, when she saw little Larissa in Chen Zhao's arms, she immediately lowered her voice. "Boss, look at the time. What time is it now?" Portia growled at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao shoved little Larissa into Portia's arms. "What? I'll leave little Larissa and Jerlin to you. Boss." Portia glanced outside. Apart from little Jerlin and Larissa, all the kids were awake. Emu Edith and Navot Singh were also standing outside the door. "Boss, what are you going to do?" "Enjoy the scenery," Chen Zhao answered seriously. "Late at night? You have so many kids. Is there a problem?" Of course there was a problem. Portia stared at Chen Zhao with dead fish eyes. "Boss, are you serious? Do I look like I'm joking?" "I think you're just joking." "Okay, take care of little Jerlin and Larissa for me." "Boss, I think you're making arrangements for your funeral. Do you still want your salary for this month?" Chen Zhao looked at Chen Zhao with a dark expression. "Oh, okay. Boss, have a safe journey." Chen Zhao teased little Larissa, who had fallen asleep again. Little Larissa pursed her lips and waved her short hands, hugging Portia's arms. He glared at Portia viciously before turning around and leaving. Portia walked in front with the kids. Edith and Chen Zhao followed behind. "Why do you have so many kids?" Edith frowned at Chen Zhao. "Revenge," Chen Zhao said. "Revenge? What can they do?" "I'll beat their enemies half to death first, and then leave the rest to them. The youngest is only 5 or 6. You want them to kill people?" "Of course not. I don't want them to kill people. They can't kill people anyway. We don't even know how strong our enemies are. You have so many kids with you. They might be affected." Edith still didn't agree with Chen Zhao's method. In his opinion, bringing kids into battle, no matter what their intentions were, it would increase the risk. "No one can hurt my child in front of me," Chen Zhao said indifferently. Suddenly, 3 people appeared at the entrance of the hotel. Chen Zhao recognized one of them. It was Okula Singh, sister of Nawat Singh. But Naarts Hingis knew them, Barbara Rush Dominguez. When Navot saw the 3 of them, he immediately became vigilant. "Nats, where are you going?" "Move, Okula. I don't want to fight you now." Navots looked at the 3 coldly. Chen Zhao walked forward. Okula glanced at Chen Zhao. They had met once when Navot Singh was hospitalized. Back then, Okula thought that Chen Zhao was a doctor. "Nats, do you need me?" "If you can't do it," Chen Zhao asked. "Who do you think you are?" Okula stared at Chen Zhao fiercely. "Chen, it's okay. Thanks." Nawat's shingles stopped him. She didn't want Chen Zhao to fight her sister. She didn't want that to happen. Otherwise, the consequences would be very serious. Okula Singh looked at her sister. "Nats, leave here." Okula looked at her sister seriously. "You don't understand what you're facing. I defeated Warren before. I can still do it now. You don't understand. You don't understand at all. You were able to defeat him last time because his plan hadn't started yet." Okula shook his head and said, "Now his plan has succeeded." "What plan does he have?" Nats asked. "He revived the 4 Pillar Kings," Okula said. "And he has the power of the Great Pillar Kings." "Nats, give up. You can't defeat Mr. Warren." Barbara was from the same family as them. She also didn't want Nats to take a fearless risk. "Give up?" asked these kids. "Will they give up?" They, Okula, Barbara, and Domingue suddenly realized that the kids before them were actually the juniors of their family. "Since they're here, I can't let you take the risk. You're going to die." "I know what I'm doing," Nats said. "Nats, you really don't need me to do anything?" "No," Nats said. "You guys go first. I'll deal with the 3. Oh, Chun, I'll lend you something." "Okay." Chen Zhao nodded. "Then hurry up and follow us." Edith and Chen Zhao sent the children onto a bus. Edith said worriedly as he drove. "Can Nawat solve the problem alone?" "Of course. You should trust her," Chen Zhao said. "Ah, she's already back." Thud. Edith suddenly heard something fall from the roof of the car. Just then, Nats jumped down from the top of the bus. Nats. Edith could not understand. He didn't expect Nats to solve the problem so quickly. The 3 men were obviously not weak, but Navot's shingles came back so quickly. Chen Zhao remembered that Nats was a perception type witch. Since when was her combat power so strong? You went too easy, Chen Zhao said. Knots couldn't do anything about it. After all, she was her sister. She didn't understand why Okula, Barbara, and Demingli were willing to be Warren's lackeys. In her eyes, the three of them had never been evil, especially her own sister. So she couldn't go too hard. She didn't even dare to use Jin form. Chen Zhao looked behind him. There was a car following. Knots, you really went too easy. They're following us. Behind him, Okula's face was filled with shock and anger. Drive faster. We have to stop them. We can't let Warren see them. They'll die. Barbara and Demingli were also worried. After all, the car in front was the last hope of the Singh family. But they knew how terrifying Warren was. Especially Warren now. Even if they weren't beside him, they could still feel his vast magic power. It was a power that made people feel despair. They couldn't even muster the courage to resist. The people in front of them were basically seeking death by going against Warren. They couldn't let them die. Definitely not. Chapter 1818. Chen Zhao leaned against the window of the bus and looked at Okula Singh, who had caught up to them. Hey little girl, you should listen to your sister. If you catch up again, I won't go easy on you. In the back seat of the sports car, Barbara had already activated the Fury Witch's spell. A ball of flames shot toward Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao clapped his hands, and the flames exploded in his palm. Barbara stared at Chen Zhao in surprise. Her attack was ineffective. She hadn't used her full strength, but it was still very easy to kill someone. Even if the target was a spiritualist, the power was enough to heavily injure them. Okula, aren't defensive spells a little too common these days? Barbara Rush said, a little annoyed. When she'd encountered Navots before, her attack had been useless. Now it was useless against a random man. Chen Zhao looked at the three people in the sports car. I think it's better to kill you now. Just then, a hand pressed down on Chen Zhao's raised arm. Navots looked at Chen Zhao. Chun, just let them follow. They can't do anything. Fine. Chen Zhao knew that Navots had softened again. But he could understand. If it was him, facing his family, they would also be as indecisive as Navots Singh. Finally, with the combined efforts of the four-pillar monarchs, a figure emerged from the center of the magic formation. When they saw the figure in the center, the four-pillar monarchs finally exhaled deeply. They'd finally succeeded. The four-pillar monarchs knelt on the ground. Greetings, Your Majesty. Even though the Roma had never established a country, in the hearts of the four-pillar monarchs, they were loyal to the true king. Whether it was his power, his breadth of mind, or even his knowledge, everything about him was so admirable. Maji Vriku and Geraldine Vriku knelt on the ground too. They looked at their incorporeal bodies' soul forms. Then Kumaras looked at Walloon standing before him. Kumaras touched his chin, and a smile appeared on his face. I can see your past, your future, your ambition in your dreams. Although I don't like what you do, I still respect you, Kumaras said. Warren knelt on one knee. Greetings, Your Majesty, Great Pillar King. Although I know your goal, I don't intend to stop you. Do you want my power? I'll give it to you, all of it. Kumaras suddenly slammed his palm towards Walloon. In an instant, a surging power was injected into Walloon's body. Ah! It was a power greater than Warren could imagine. The crystal pillar in front of his chest burst out with a strong light, and was almost instantly filled with magic. A wave of energy spread out from Warren's body, and continued to spread outwards. Like a shockwave, it spread throughout the entire city. In an instant, the entire city fell into darkness. All the buildings and the lights on the streets had disappeared. It even affected 3 or 4 nearby cities. The impact covered a radius of several hundred kilometers. The pain lasted for several minutes. But to Warren, it felt as long as centuries. However, everything was finally over. Walloon looked at his hands in disbelief. At this moment, Warren felt that the pain just now was nothing. All the hard work was nothing. It was all worth it. He finally got his reward. This power, this godlike power, he couldn't believe it at all. Warren took a deep breath and took off heal, Holy Spirit, order, fearless, and guidance. Geraldine Vickers' eyes glowed. He's Warren now, or Kumaras? Warren, he's Warren. His gaze hasn't changed, Geraldine Vickers said. Why? Shouldn't his body be occupied by Kumaras? Why hasn't his consciousness and soul been erased? He can't possibly resist Great Pillar King's consciousness. Because of the things in his hands, Geraldine Vicker said. Those are the artifacts of the 5 families, right? Maji Vicker asked. Yes, they're all made by the Cook family. Those things, can they prevent Warren from losing control of his body to chimeras? Fearless, it's immune to all fear and also immune to all mind control. Order, it's an artifact that maintains one's self, undisturbed by outsiders' guidance, and gives the most powerful protection to the soul. Holy Spirit strengthens all attributes of self. Geraldine Vicker said. There's also heal, which doubles the power of the other 4 artifacts. So this is the reason why he took the 4 artifacts. To take Quimera's power, but not be controlled by chimeras. Although Walloon had calculated everything, he didn't expect that even though Quemela's was in soul form, he still couldn't be manipulated by Walloon. But he still succeeded. Quimera's power was taken by him. No, Quimera's gave it to him. He didn't take it. At this moment, the 5 artifacts floated in front of Warren. Warren began to unleash unparalleled power. It was so powerful that it was shocking. Even Walloon himself was astonished. However, such a powerful force did not seem to be able to dry up. Great, this is the power. It's fascinating power. Under Warren's powerful power, the 5 artifacts began to gradually merge. What is he doing? Is he destroying the 5 artifacts? No, on the contrary, he's showing the true face of the artifacts, Geraldine Vicker said. True face? I don't understand. Your father once studied the artifact Holy Spirit in his hand. Geraldine Vicker's eyes lit up. He found that the Holy Spirit is actually incomplete. But the Holy Spirit has never been damaged since it appeared. How could it be damaged? So there's only one possibility. It's not that the master of a certain era destroyed the artifact, but the artifact has always been incomplete since it was created. The original purpose of the Cook family creating the 5 artifacts was to combine them into one. Maybe since 2,000 years ago, the Cook family has been waiting for this opportunity, Maji Vicker said. I really can't believe it. After waiting for 2,000 years for a huge plan to seize the power of a god, this plan has finally been completed in Warren's hands. He has the power of a god, and at the same time, he has a true divine artifact. No one in this world can defeat him. The 5 artifacts turned into a near-perfect golden armor, and automatically put it on Warren's body. /35_. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1819. A halo appeared behind Walloon's head. Right now he looked like a real god. No, not like. He was a god. Walloon exhaled the turbid air in his body. Brick looked at Sean, Bion, Zoran and Erewhon. You already know my real goal, and you've completed the deal. Are you going to leave now? Or are you going to stop me? Walloon would not underestimate the 4 Pillar Kings. However, he was not afraid of them either. He was stronger than them. He could clearly feel the difference. Sean had a faint smile on his face. No need. His Majesty Quemeras said that we don't need to do anything. We only need to wait to return to heaven. Before that, please control us like His Majesty. Sean's smile was as dazzling as summer flowers. Walloon did not understand that he had Quemera's power. However, he could not understand Quemeras's intentions. He did not understand his words either. He also did not understand what the 4 Pillar Kings meant. They already knew that he'd lied to them. However, they seemed to be a bit too generous. They had completely forgotten about the past, and were still willing to be loyal to him. They had power but no cultivation. It was awkward. Just then, a voice came from the back. The people from the Vrykul family must be crazy. Every time they come in and out, it's like they're taking a shower. It's like a water curtain cave. Chen Zhao combed his hair, and shook off the water on his body. Everyone looked behind them, and saw a few people walking out from the entrance of the cave. However, the combination of this group of people was really strange. 3 adults and a group of children. Who are you? Get out of here, Maji Vrykul yelled. Walloon waved his hand and said indifferently, Maji, move. Walloon had already seen Nawat's singer. Clearly they were here for revenge. Yes, Mr. Walloon. So ugly. Who designed this armor? Chen Zhao looked at the dazzling armor on Walloon. He really felt that it was ugly. Extremely ugly. Walloon's expression started to turn ugly. This was the masterpiece of the Cook family's ancestor. It was also a divine artifact that he was proud of. But now it was being belittled by a stranger. What made him feel the most ashamed was that, now that everyone's eyes were on him, it made him feel even more ashamed. Warren clenched his fists. He felt like he was going to have a cerebral hemorrhage. But as soon as he got angry, the mana in his body surged like a tsunami. The four-pillar kings frowned and took a step back. Although they were not as powerful as the current Warren. However, they wouldn't be scared off by Warren's aura. It was just that Warren's strength had exceeded their expectations. Warren's current strength had already surpassed Quimera's. Edith's expression changed drastically. What a terrifying aura. Just the aura alone was enough to make him unable to resist it. Who will kill him? Warren asked indifferently. At this moment, Geraldine Vrika stepped forward. Mr. Warren, please give me a chance to express my loyalty to you. Warren nodded slightly. Go, don't let me down. Edith also took a step forward, looking like he was ready to die for justice. Geraldine, I didn't expect you to be a traitor. Edith knew Geraldine Vrika. Geraldine Vrika smiled disapprovingly. Stop talking. Just do it. If you can't even beat me, you'd better leave. I don't want to kill you. This was the only thing Geraldine Vrika could do. In your dreams, Edith growled. His body suddenly split into two into four into 8. Oh, Chen Zhao exclaimed. Edith's spell was very similar to the doppelganger. But upon closer inspection, he realized that something was wrong. Edith's clones had indeed become 8. But the 8 clones only had 1/8 of the original's power. The original's power was also 1/8. In other words, Edith's spell had actually split his power into 8 parts. However, when Edith's clones and original fought, Chen Zhao realized that the clone spell wasn't without its advantages. Both his main body and his doppelgangers had unique attributes. His main body was water element, while his other clones were lightning element, voodoo element, fire element, wind element, earth element, strength element, speed element, and stealth element. The 8 clones attacked at the same time. The scene was as beautiful as a painting, brilliant and colorful. Whoosh! What a beautiful and magnificent spell. Then he turned to the kids beside him and asked, Do you want Coke and popcorn? Geraldine Vicker, on the other hand, dodged Edith's intensive attacks in a slightly awkward manner. But at this time, Edith's magic flaws were also revealed. The attack power was too weak. Geraldine Vrika was obviously hit by magic several times, but he was only lightly injured. Not a single spell could seriously injure him, or make him lose the ability to fight. You really shouldn't use this spell in front of me. I know you too well, especially your weakness. Edith's expression grew more and more solemn. The last person he wanted to face was Geraldine Vrika. If necromancy was said to be the strangest of all magic systems, then Geraldine Vrika was the weirdest psychic among all the psychics. Suddenly, one of Edith's clones shrieked and turned into smoke. Edith froze, his face full of astonishment. He had no idea how Chen Zhao did it. How had his clones been destroyed? Then the second, the third, the fourth, at the 7th clone, only Edith's main body was left. Isn't it weird? Geraldine Vrika looked at her friend with a smile. This is my newly developed spell, Psionic Tentacles. It transforms magic into invisible tentacles. This spell is very similar to Countless Ties, Chen Zhao murmured. Geraldine Vicker seemed to have heard Chen Zhao's words and glanced at him. When she saw Chen Zhao, she almost vomited blood. Chen Zhao was sitting cross-legged on the ground. The kids beside him were the same. Everyone had Coke and popcorn in their hands. Did they come here to watch a movie? Uncle M, go! The kids cheered at the same time. You can't beat him, Chen Zhao called. You better back off. You can't sense his tentacles unless you can open your psionic vision. Psionic vision? Edith could tell that Chen Zhao was reminding him, but he couldn't do it. He looked at Geraldine Vrika, unwilling to give up. You should listen to him. You can't beat me. Chapter 1820. Edith was discouraged, but he was also desperate. He'd been pessimistic about this trip, especially after seeing Walloon's terrifying and peerless pressure. He no longer held any hope in this matter. Now he couldn't even beat Geraldine Vrikel. He couldn't stop Walloon and take revenge. Edith couldn't see any hope. Geraldine Vrikel looked at Chun Zhao. Mr. Over there, do you think you can beat me? Any kid I send can beat you up. Do you believe me? Chun Zhao said casually. Geraldine Vrikel smiled but didn't say anything. She looked at Chun Zhao calmly. Kilo, stand up and beat him up, Chun Zhao said. Kilo, who was happily eating popcorn and sipping Coke, heard the bad news in the blink of an eye. Uncle, you want me to go? Yeah, go. Teach him a lesson for me. Everyone was stunned by Chun Zhao's decision. How could such a young boy defeat Geraldine? Do you believe me? Chun Zhao asked seriously. Kilo didn't believe him, but he couldn't say it. He looked at Chun Zhao with a troubled expression. Good. I'll take it that you agree if you don't say anything. Chun Zhao grabbed Kilo's shoulder. Go. Kilo was thrown before Geraldine Vrikel. For a moment, Kilo didn't know what to do. Chun Zhao sat cross-legged and supported his face with one arm. Smiling, he looked at Kilo. In Chun Zhao's small world, spiritual qi was silently seeping into Kilo's body. Others couldn't, but Kilo could. Because Kilo was an enhancer, his body was stronger than normal people. Of course, Chun Zhao didn't drink too much. Edith's face was green. Mr. Chun, what are you doing? Are you sending your child to die? Just because you lost doesn't mean others will. Chun Zhao glanced at and then at Kilo. Kilo, beat him up. Don't give me face. Kilo was helpless. Facing the powerful Geraldine Vrikel, he could only brace himself. Haha. Kilo raised his arm and hammered at Geraldine Vrikel. There was a smile on Geraldine Vrikel's face. Her psionic tentacles had already wrapped around Kilo's limbs. Kuluo suddenly felt his limbs grow sluggish, but it didn't affect his movements. Crow suddenly exerted his strength and punched Geraldine Vrikel. Geraldine Vrikel's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly put up a barrier in front of him. Sizzle! Crow's fist slammed into the wall, producing a sharp ear-piercing sound. Everyone had an uncomfortable expression on their faces. Then he saw the barrier in front of Geraldine Vrikel was falling apart rapidly. What great power! Edith and Geraldine Vicker were old acquaintances. He had seen Geraldine Vrikel's magic. He knew that this barrier was so strong that it could even withstand the impact of a truck. But it was shattered by a child. Kilo's momentum had weakened, but he was still as ferocious as ever. It landed heavily on Geraldine's face. Geraldine Vrikel covered her face and sat on the ground, astonishment written all over her face. Everyone else had the same expression. Astonishment. Including Kilo, they all had the same expression. So weak? Tilting his head, Kilo looked at Geraldine Vrikel. This sentence not only embarrassed Geraldine Vicker, but it also embarrassed Edith. After all, he'd been defeated by Geraldine Vrikel. Kilo turned his head to look at Chun Zhao. Clap! Chun Zhao led the applause, and the other children followed. Kilo was instantly filled with energy. Kilo, be more arrogant, Chun Zhao called. Come on, you minions. Kilo made an indecent gesture. Fuck, don't give me the middle finger, Chun Zhao immediately shouted. Geraldine Vrikel's face darkened. These people were too arrogant. Saying that, he was about to walk forward, but Geraldine Vrikel stopped him. You can't beat him, Geraldine Vrikel said. Geraldine Vrikel was also surprised. He didn't feel that Kilo was very powerful. Yet Kilo could ignore his magic. He didn't get any answers from Kilo either. Just then Bayan walked out. Brat, let me exchange a move with you. As long as you can survive my attack, I will admit defeat. Just like before, Byron became younger with every step he took. At the same time, he also emitted a horrifying pressure. Compared to Geraldine Vrikel, his pressure was 10 times, 100 times stronger. Edith's expression turned solemn. Kilo also took a step back unconsciously. Unlike Wallen, who almost enveloped the area with his aura, Bayan's aura was very directional. When everyone looked at Bayan, it was as if they were looking at a ruin. The children beside Chun Zhao all shut their mouths. They were also shocked by Bayan's power. Kilo, come back, Chun Zhao called. Kilo had been strengthened by Chun Zhao, but it was very limited. He definitely couldn't fight an enemy of this level. The enemy before him was definitely in the Shangqing state. He wasn't much weaker than Zhang Tianyi. Just as Chen Zhao was about to stand up, Navots said, "Let me do it." "You." Chen Zhao frowned at her. "I don't have much time," Navots said. "I don't have much time," Nawat Singh said. Once it was over, she would have no combat ability at all. Once the duration of the mirror image magic was over, she would have no combat strength to speak of. Chen Zhao thought for a moment, nodded and sat back down. With each step, she also grew a bit larger. Similarly, with every step she took, her figure grew a little larger. Her skin glowed with a golden light. Her skin glowed with a golden light. Edith's face was filled with shock. At the moment, Navots seemed to be a different person. That shocking pressure was actually on par with Byron's. Nawat Singh was also taking a gamble. At this moment, Okula Singh, Barbara Rush, and Domingo rushed over. Their arrival didn't attract much attention. They were quietly observing the situation. Everyone's gaze was on Navots Singh. Wallen narrowed his eyes at Navots. She was so powerful. He'd lost to her last time. This woman was Okula's older sister. But where did she get such great power from? She could actually be on par with Bayan. Even if it was only temporary. It was still unbelievable. Who was Bayan? He was the Northern Pillar King. Chapter 1821. Bayan looked at Navots in surprise. He also didn't expect someone to be on par with him. Even if it was just in terms of aura. It was still unbelievable. "Come," Bayan said calmly. Navots didn't hold back. She had already tried her best. But the more she tried, the more she felt that the person before her was powerful and undefeatable. He had reached an inhuman level. Navots didn't have any extra flourishes. It was just a simple punch. It came crashing down with the pressure of Mount Tai. Admiration flashed in Bayan's eyes. He suddenly pushed his palms forward. A dazzling impact shot out from Bayan's palms. The impact instantly drowned Navots. The impact shot toward the back of Navots like a hot knife through butter, all the way to the mountain wall. The mountain wall was blasted apart, and tens of thousands of tons of rubble poured down in torrents. Everyone was shocked by this attack. Okula's heart tightened. In the next instant, Navots Singh broke through the light and stood above Bayan. She raised her hand and punched down. It smashed heavily onto Bayan's head. Bayan was sent flying, leaving a ditch on the ground. Navots stood where she was, panting heavily. Bayan stood up too. Half of his face was almost deformed. One could imagine how much damage that attack had done to him. However, Bayan's sunken cheeks were quickly filled with blood. After spitting out some blood, Bayan's face had basically returned to normal. Edith's face was completely pale. Even Navots, who had been so powerful, wasn't Bayan's match. On the other hand, Byron was unscathed after suffering such a heavy blow. Bayan wasn't angry. Instead, he was even more shocked. He saw that Navots' aura was weakening. In fact, he'd already felt that while Navots had a strong aura, her foundation was rather weak. However, the battle prowess that she displayed was refreshing. Still a little lacking. Bayan stood before Navots and shook his head. He said regretfully, "What a pity. She's such a junior." "Yeah, it's still not enough." Chen Zhao finally stood up. Even if Navots gave it his all, he was still a far cry from Bayan. Okula's face was filled with worry. After all, that was her older sister. Byron looked up and saw Chen Zhao walking toward him. Chen Zhao's aura was weak, so weak that it was almost undetectable. Byron narrowed his eyes at Chen Zhao, who had his hands in his pockets. Byron pointed at Navots and looked at Chen Zhao. "Do you want to save her?" "No need. You can't kill anyone in front of me," Byron sneered. His palm that was pointing at Navots was already shining brightly. "How about now?" Suddenly, Chen Zhao disappeared before Byron's eyes. Byron felt a chill down his spine and quickly turned around. Chen Zhao appeared behind him, waving his fist with one arm. His eyes were fierce. Shan, Zoran, and Erewhon attacked at the same time. Shan abruptly shot out a dozen or so string balls. The dozen or so balls of string spun and shot out colorful ropes. They wrapped around Chen Zhao's raised right arm. Chen Zhao's right arm shook forcefully. The dozen ropes representing different elements were instantly scattered. Byron didn't retreat. Instead, he advanced and grabbed Chen Zhao's right wrist, preventing him from moving. Chen Zhao finally took out his left arm from his pocket. But at this time, Zoran quickly cast a spell and shouted, "Dragon lock." Then the ground was pierced by chains. The chains shot toward Chen Zhao from the ground and wrapped around his left arm. His left and right arms were controlled at the same time. Erewhon put his palms together and hacked down from above. Radiant Emperor slash. Intense light gathered in Erewhon's palms. From within the light, an extremely sharp and huge sword extended out. The sword was called Radiant Emperor. It hacked down at Chen Zhao. Clang. Chen Zhao tilted his head slightly, and the sword landed on his shoulder. Blood was seen, but the sword couldn't go any deeper. Everything had happened too quickly. Of course, it ended just as quickly. It started from when Chen Zhao appeared behind Byron without any warning. Then, when the four Pillar Kings attacked at the same time, controlling and counterattacking Chen Zhao. It only happened in an instant and ended in an instant. Aim Edith's face was filled with shock. Maji Vicar and Geraldine Vicar were even more shocked, because they knew who the four people who attacked them were. Any one of them was a god of the Roma people. But now all four of them had attacked at the same time. Who exactly was that person? Chen Zhao was controlled, but his expression was calm and indifferent. On the other hand, the four clearly had Chen Zhao under control, but their expressions were still serious. Kilo, come and help Nawats back. Nawats was right behind Chen Zhao. That was why Chen Zhao restrained his movements. Kilo hurriedly ran to Nawats. He helped her back to the side. Xian Li, protect everyone, Chen Zhao said. Xian Li's face was filled with worry. After all, Chen Zhao didn't seem to be in a good situation. Are you sure they can protect themselves? Suddenly, Warren charged at the children. Boom! Just then the four Pillar Kings, who should have controlled Chen Zhao firmly, suddenly felt an unparalleled power surge at them. The four Pillar Kings were sent flying. The next moment, Chen Zhao blocked Warren's path. Chen Zhao's hand suddenly grabbed the shoulder of Warren's golden armor and squeezed hard. Crack! The shoulder was crushed by Chen Zhao. As expected, I still think your armor is too ugly. Warren's expression darkened. He took a few steps back and pointed his arms at Chen Zhao. In an instant, 10 golden swords appeared behind Warren and shot towards Chen Zhao. Clang, clang, clang. The golden swords weren't damaged at all. Chen Zhao waved casually, and the 10 golden swords turned into scrap metal. The scene was silent. Everyone stared at Chen Zhao in disbelief. Especially Maji Vicar and Geraldine Vicar. They knew who the four people were. They also knew what kind of existence Warren was now. But Chen Zhao was fighting 1 against 5? Okula Singh, Barbara Rush, and Demingli were equally shocked. They also knew that those four were the legendary four Pillar Kings. Chen Zhao picked up a scrap sword from the ground. He looked left and right. Fuck, it's not gold. What a waste of my feelings. Chen Zhao was so angry that he squeezed the scrap sword into a ball. That ugly armor you're wearing is made of gold, right? Edith's eyeballs almost popped out. This guy had been so unreliable the entire time. He didn't expect him to be so strong. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1822. The four Pillar Kings glanced at each other. This person was very strong. So strong that it made people's hair stand on end. I can't believe there's a monster like you in this era. Byron looked at Chen Zhao. It was hard to tell if his tone was gratified or regretful. Just then, everyone realized that Byron's body and face had become younger. But his aura had also become stronger, until he was like a baby. His aura was more than 10 times stronger. Sean's hair also grew longer. Her hair was blood red to begin with. Now it was even burning. Zoran and Erewhon's auras also grew rapidly. They hadn't used their full strength before, but now they had to. Warren spread his arms, and hundreds of golden swords appeared behind him. Everyone had thought that Chen Zhao could really fight 1 against 5. But now they realized that their thoughts had been too excessive. The four Pillar Kings and Warren had already fought to a terrifying degree. But at this moment, it was as if everyone's foundation had been increased tenfold. Could they really fight this battle? Gritting his teeth, Chen Zhao looked at the four Pillar Kings. Are you serious now? Why don't the four of you pretend to fight me? That way, everyone can report back. The four Pillar Kings stared at Chen Zhao with dark expressions. Who would pretend to fight with you? Forget it, forget it. Looks like you really want to fight. Clone. 10,000 spells returned to 1. dark assimilation, strength multiplication, giant spirit transformation. Right now, Chen Zhao had become a 5-meter-tall giant. Chen Zhao took out the black trident. Just like Chen Zhao, the black trident could change in size and length. Everyone was a little frightened, including the children behind Chen Zhao. Attack! Warren shouted. Hundreds of golden swords shot at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao pointed with his left hand. Thousands of stone swords appeared in the air. The scene was much more majestic than hundreds of golden swords. The 4 Pillar Kings attacked Chen Zhao at the same time. Chen Zhao held the black trident in his right hand and swept it out. Retreat! Shan felt her scalp go numb. She cried out and immediately flew back. Byron hesitated for a moment. When he wanted to retreat, it was already too late. He could only raise his magic to the maximum and yell, "Immortal!" Instantly, Byron's body became as resplendent as a diamond. However, when the trident swept across his body, the diamonds on his body began to crack like glass. The dazzling diamond disintegrated and sputtered outwards. Byron's diamond body was cut in half at the waist. Then Chen Zhao stabbed at Byron's half-body. Byron's head exploded like a watermelon. Immediately afterward, all of Byron's fragments burst into a bright light that soared into the sky. The beam of light lasted for a few seconds before the diamond-like fragments were reduced to dull ashes. Dead? Byron is dead? Shan muttered to himself. He has returned to heaven and earth. This time, he is truly free. Erewhon's face was emotionless. Who is this guy? Zoran's gaze was unprecedentedly serious as he stared at Chen Zhao. Whether it was the remaining 3 Pillar Kings or Warren, or Maji Vicar, Geraldine Vicar and Okula Singas, they all stared at him in disbelief. One strike. It was just one strike. Everything was over. An unbelievable opponent. However, the next moment, Chen Zhao said something that made everyone speechless. What a pity, Chen Zhao said regretfully. If I sold such a large diamond, I don't know how many millions I could get. Warren, Zoran, Erewhon and Shan's gazes became unprecedentedly serious. Of course, Shan's gaze was still serious, and his smile was still like a blooming flower. Warren, I didn't think that you would encounter such a strong opponent right after you succeeded. I won't lose. Warren's expression was cold, and his gaze was serious. His tone was firm, but he gave off a feeling of lack of confidence. If His Majesty Quemelas faced him personally, the outcome might be 50-50, but I'm stronger than Quemelas, Warren said forcefully. Zoran glanced at Warren indifferently. You only obtained Quemelas's power, but not his realm. Also, how much of Quemelas's magic do you know? The opponent is at the same level as Quemelas. His realm matches his strength and battle experience are extremely rich. You, on the other hand, are just a nouveau riche who inherited a huge inheritance. Ha! Shan chuckled, but her laughter was so piercing to Warren's ears. Cut the crap. Quemelas wants you to listen to my orders. Even if you die, you have to fight to the end. As you wish. Shan smiled and shrugged. However, Chen Zhao suddenly attacked. The black trident appeared in front of Shan without any warning. Sorry for interrupting your conversation. Shan's expression froze, but in the blink of an eye, a relieved smile appeared on her face. Free. This time, she could finally be truly free. The black trident smashed Shan's beautiful head into pieces. The other spectators shivered in the cold wind. Chen Zhao did not care whether the opponent was male or female, beautiful or not. Hell's chains! Zoran roared. Countless chains broke out of the ground and swept toward Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao's huge body was instantly bound tightly by the hell's chains. But Chen Zhao was not trapped for long. Chen Zhao flipped his wrists and grabbed the chains on his arms. He pulled hard, and the ground seemed to have been plucked. The chains on Chen Zhao's body were like spider silk. The hell's chains were torn to pieces. Radiant Emperor kill. Erewhon's attack was dozens of times more powerful than the previous one. It landed on Chen Zhao, as if it was going to split the ground. But the result this time was even worse than last time. At least Chen Zhao could see blood last time. But this time, the huge sword fell apart the moment it landed. In the blink of an eye, Chen Zhao appeared before Erewhon and grabbed her head. He crushed it like a watermelon. Everyone received a huge visual impact. Zoran did not stop. Chen Zhao turned around and threw the black trident. Whoosh! Zoran was pierced by the black trident. The black trident had the power to kill gods. The immortal power inner core of Old Turtle embedded in it turned the black trident from a normal magic weapon into a weapon that could kill gods. Zoran looked down at the huge hole in his chest. He suddenly smiled and flipped forward. A pillar of light shot into the sky. It was like the last light of this worshipped god. The 4 pillar kings had all turned to dust. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1823. The black trident was stuck in the ground. Chen Zhao didn't take it back. He turned to look at Warren and grinned. You look really ugly, but it looks like you can take a beating. You think you can beat me? Warren was both shocked and angry. He looked at Chen Zhao with some fear in his eyes. But Warren clearly wasn't going to give up. Waylon's body suddenly enlarged. No, it wasn't just enlarging. It was the armor on his body that was enlarging. Bigger and bigger. 10 meters, 20 meters, 30 meters. He didn't stop until he was 200 meters tall. Right now, Warren was like a statue made of gold. However, this golden statue could move. Everyone was dumbfounded as they looked at the golden giant that blotted out the sky. Their astonishment couldn't be described with words. This was beyond their understanding. It was also beyond what they could do. Chen Zhao's body also glowed gold, but it wasn't obvious. Chen Zhao looked up at the 200-meter-tall golden giant. He murmured to himself, if only this was real gold. Unfortunately, Chen Zhao could only think about it in his head. This giant was probably 100,000 tons, right? Chen Zhao flew up and kicked the golden giant's left thigh. Crack! The golden giant's left thigh deformed from the kick. Everyone's mouths were wide open. Chen Zhao was indeed tall compared to normal people. But compared to a 200-meter-tall golden giant, he was still tiny and insignificant. But it was the difference between an ant and an elephant. The golden giant's thigh was broken by Chen Zhao's kick. The moment the golden giant lost its balance, it reached out to slap Chen Zhao in the air. But the next moment, Chen Zhao grabbed the golden giant's body and threw it over his shoulder. Rumble! Everyone's mouths were wide open. Barbara Rush gulped. She was provoking him just now, right? She must have been blessed by God. She actually didn't get killed. Nawat Singh lay on the ground weakly. But she was also watching the battle. To her, this was the most shocking. Now she finally understood how big the difference between her and Chen Zhao was. Even though they had the same abilities, there was a fundamental difference between them. This gap couldn't be bridged at all. She had been wondering if she could borrow a fraction of Chen Zhao's power with mirror magic. Would she be able to do that? Only now did she understand. How much was that? 1%. Or 1 in 1,000? Xianli clutched her chest. She tried her best to imagine how powerful Chen Zhao would be after adopting them. But she had never thought that Chen Zhao would display such a shocking side. As for Warren's men, Maji Vrykul and the others, they couldn't describe their astonishment. The 4 Pillar Kings were all dead. They were practically tortured to death by Chen Zhao. Although their battle was shocking, it was not soul-stirring. Warren, who'd inherited Quimira's power, was also suppressed. Bang! A huge golden arm flew up. Roar! The golden giant let out a strange cry as Chen Zhao pressed it against the ground. Chen Zhao flew up and then dove down, landing heavily on the golden giant's chest. The golden giant couldn't get up in time, and was once again blasted to the ground. The golden giant's chest had already caved in. Bang! Rumble! The golden giant finally lay motionless on the ground. Chen Zhao went up and twisted the golden giant's neck. Then he punched the golden giant's head. The golden giant's head was severely deformed. Chen Zhao punched a few more times, each with endless power. Finally, the metal shell was destroyed beyond recognition. Chen Zhao saw Warren, who was hiding inside. Warren stared at Chen Zhao in shock and anger. You damn bastard! I haven't lost yet. Chen Zhao went up and pried open the metal. Warren was completely exposed before Chen Zhao. Warren fought back again. Countless golden swords shot at Chen Zhao. At the same time, he turned to leave. But Chen Zhao dodged and blocked Warren's figure. With a dragon tail whip, Warren was smashed into the ground heavily. Maji Geraldine. Do it! Warren roared. Warren wanted Maji Vrykul and Geraldine Vrykul to attack. Of course, he wasn't targeting Chen Zhao. 100 of them wouldn't be enough for Chen Zhao. Warren wanted the two of them to attack the kids. This was to distract Chen Zhao. Maji Vrykul and Geraldine Vrykul glanced at each other. After a slight hesitation, they were about to attack the kids. But just then, a huge figure crawled out of the darkness. It was a completely black beast with wings on its back. There wasn't a single bit of skin on its body. It emitted a dangerous aura and protected the kids behind it. Maji Vrykul and Geraldine Vrykul were helpless. This black beast was most likely related to Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao smashed Warren before the kids with a punch. Warren jumped up and immediately wanted to harm the kids. Just then, Chen Zhao stepped over and pressed him to the ground. Chen Zhao tore off Warren's armor, but the armor was torn off along with his bones and flesh. But after Chen Zhao tossed the armor part away, it flew back and stuck to Warren's body. I hate these unkillable cockroaches. Chen Zhao waved his hand. The black trident that had been hundreds of meters away flew back into his hand. Chen Zhao stabbed the black trident into Warren's abdomen. Wah! Ah! Warren let out a tragic scream. The black trident pierced into his body, causing his powerful recovery ability to lose its effect. Even the holy armor couldn't protect him. This time, Chen Zhao easily took off Warren's helmet. He looked up at Xinli Sing. Xinli, do you want revenge? Xinli's chest heaved up and down. Just as she was hesitating, the youngest Sindora walked over to Warren with her short legs. Bam! She spat at Warren's face. I'm going to kill you, little bee. Chen Zhao stuffed a mouthful of dirt into Warren's mouth. Uncle, can I do anything? Kilo asked. Yes, anything. Chen Zhao nodded, but then he added, don't do dirty things in front of your brothers and sisters. Crow went up and gave Walloon a heavy punch. However, his attack did not do much damage to Warren. Even though Warren's magic, recovery, and the power of the holy artifact were all suppressed. But he was still powerful. Sindora, Mara, what are you two doing? Uncle, Mara said innocently. I'm competing with Sindora to see who can spit more. Chen Zhao rubbed his forehead. Binance, put on your pants. I order you. Put on your pants. 9 Heavens, Divine Emperor. Chapter 1824. Chen Zhao was frustrated. When we take revenge, we have to take revenge. We have to take revenge properly. Revenge is such a sacred thing. Don't do something that hurts the enemy by 1,000, but hurts yourself by 800, okay? When you grow up and realize what you did, you'll probably be traumatized for the rest of your life. Xinli, you really don't want some? Chen Zhao looked at Xinli Sing. Xinli hesitated for a long time, but in the end, she shook her head. No. You really don't want it? It's best to vent. It doesn't matter what violent methods you use. Anyway, our family doesn't tolerate it. Xinli shook her head. No need. I think you'll give him the punishment he deserves. Uncle, I want to take a photo with you. Didi tugged at Chen Zhao's calf. With Chen Zhao's current height, the 12-year-old Didi only reached his calf. Chen Zhao reached out and had Didi stand on his hand. Then he held Didi. Chen, should we finish this earlier? I really need an ambulance now. Not Sing endured the pain all over her body. Her body was already overloaded from the attack she'd used. If Chen Zhao and the kids kept delaying, she'd have to go to the morgue. Fine. Chen Zhao lifted the black trident. Warren was still strung on the tip. I'll go talk to him about life. Chen Zhao carried Warren and disappeared before everyone. A while later, a pillar of light shot into the sky. After a while, Chen Zhao returned. There were still bloodstains on the black trident. Xinli glanced at Chen Zhao, but didn't say anything. Chen Zhao removed the spell on him. Kilo carry knots. Uncle, why me? Kilo lowered his head, not daring to look at Chen Zhao. Because you're strong. Otherwise, who would carry you? Your sister or brother? Chen Zhao said matter-of-factly. Let me do it, Edith said. I'm only good for this. Knots rolled her eyes at Chen Zhao. She pointed at Maji and the others. What about them? How? Kill them all? It's up to you. Navats glanced at Okula Singh. Forget it, their master is dead anyway. Chen Zhao glanced at Maji and the others. Everyone's expression was unnatural. Among all of them, only Geraldine Vickers didn't have much fear. Or you want me to kill them? Forget it then. They won't be a threat anyway. She glanced at her sister from the corner of her eyes. but her heart was full of complicated emotions. What a pity. I hope he didn't get the password. Everyone was speechless. No wonder when he had killed the 4 Pillar Kings. He had been so ruthless. Yet he had not shown any signs of holding back. Killing Warren and avoiding everyone else? Exionly, the lives of everyone on the bus are in your hands. Uncle, I haven't gotten my license yet. I can only take it next year. Exionly didn't know what to do. It's okay. You can practice on all of us. It'll be easier for you to get your driver's license. Chun, I feel like all the bones in my body are broken. Can you send me to the hospital safely? Don't worry, I believe in Exionly. You know she can drive. She steals the steering wheel in the garage every night. I think Exionly has the heart of a racer. Exionly was too ashamed to show her face. She did like sports cars. But she also knew that she couldn't drive without a license. Plus, she had just arrived, so she had to keep a low profile. So, she would secretly touch the steering wheel every day. In the end, Chen Zhao, the unscrupulous parent, exposed her. If you can send Nawatz to the hospital, and send us back to the hotel safely, I'll buy you a car for your 16th birthday. Exian Li's face was filled with surprise and anticipation. The citywide blackout had already been completely restored. Chen Zhao looked at the night view, entering a rare moment of peace. Before Chen Zhao killed Walloon, he'd sensed something in his body. After Quemelas came out of Warren's body, only then did Chen Zhao understand that it was a connection between the same kind. Quemelas was a man of God in that era. Quemelas had lived for 300 years. Of course, if there were no accidents, he could have lived even longer. They had a short conversation. In any era, someone like Quemelas would be considered a madman. Of course, Chen Zhao didn't think of a madman as someone who killed and burned everywhere, or had the ambition to rule the world. It was a kind of idealistic madness. Of course, Quemelas would kill too. If someone stopped his intentions or thoughts, he would probably kill too. However, in that era, he was an absolute king and an absolute powerhouse. Because of this, he felt lonely. Chen Zhao was pretty much invincible now, but he didn't feel lonely. Perhaps it was because there were too few entertainment programs in that era. If he could watch Victoria's Secret every night, he probably wouldn't be lonely. Of course, Quemelas's idealistic and goal were very pure. He wanted to create a perfect world, but not the real world. A perfect world of death. In the East, the underworld was the example. In the West, it was hell. Both were essentially the same. They were both worlds that the dead went to and lived in. But there were some differences between the two. Gods in the underworld were in charge of management. They were more like employees in a large company. On the other hand, hell was a kingdom ruled by demons. Those demon kings treated the souls from the human world as their private property. In Quemelas's guess, hell and the underworld were more like a complete world. However, regardless of whether it was hell or the netherworld, they were both much, much larger than the human world. So in Quemelas's guess, the human world was incomplete. Hell and the underworld were more like mismatched parts. They were only there to ensure the operation of the human world. Quemelas wanted to use this to complete the incomplete parts of the human world. He wanted to create a world of the dead outside of hell, or the underworld. Quemelas used his ability to open up an alternate dimension. Of course, Chen Zhao's alternate dimension was completely different. Quemelas's was larger and more complete. For this, he spent more than 100 years constantly making up for the inadequacies of this alternate dimension. In this aspect, Chen Zhao was far inferior to Quemelas. Of course, Chen Zhao's ambition wasn't here either. Chen Zhao and Quemelas's conversation was more about complementing each other's inadequacies. Chen Zhao was better at fighting. Quemelas's fighting was actually his weakness. But his weakness was only relative to Chen Zhao. After all, he was a god. How weak could he be? 9 Heavens, Divine Emperor. Chapter 1825. Quemelas's legacy wasn't his power. It was the heaven for the dead that he'd spent 150 years creating. Quemelas was too tired. He didn't want to maintain it anymore. He couldn't maintain it anymore. He hoped that Chen Zhao could take over the heaven. But Chen Zhao refused. Only a lunatic would accept it. Quemelas was a lunatic. He'd created trouble for himself. Then he'd merged with the heaven he'd created. Now he was free. But he wanted Chen Zhao to take it over. He wouldn't do such a thankless thing even if he was beaten to death. When he returned to the hotel, the sky was already bright. Everyone looked a little tired. As soon as he went upstairs, he saw Portia walk out of her room with a haggard expression. She hadn't slept since Chen Zhao woke her up last night. After settling little Larissa down, little Jerlin woke up again. Then she wanted to find her father. Where could Portia find one for her? After much persuasion, Chen Zhao finally calmed Jerlin down. In the end, the electricity went out, just like that. Then the temperature in the room started rising. Jerlin started crying again. Little Larissa woke up too. Anyway, she'd been tormented for the whole night. Portia ran to the front desk angrily. But the front desk couldn't give her electricity. "Boss, I'm telling you now I want." Chen Zhao patted Portia's shoulder. "You're not awake right now. Go rest for half a day. Tell me what you want when you're awake." Stunned, Portia returned to her room embarrassedly. Her resentment only lasted for a moment. After venting, she sobered up. What a joke. No matter what. The money she owed was a topic that couldn't be avoided. Forget it. She'd just be a laborer for Chen Zhao. I'll book a return ticket for today. We're going back to L.A. today. Today? Go back? But, boss, didn't you say I'd rest for half a day? That's right. On the plane. The flight is exactly 6 hours. Portia really wanted to buy a gun and shoot Chen Zhao. But then she remembered that Chen Zhao had faced more than a dozen gunmen before. He'd broken all their limbs. Portia stopped imagining things in her mind. Unless she could get a cannon and tie Chen Zhao in the mouth, on the plane. Where's Miss Knotts? Hospital. What happened to her? Tricosant's muscle disorder. What illness is this? Diarrhea. Portia immediately reacted to the situation. Chen Zhao always spouted nonsense in front of her. Moreover, he had never been afraid of cold or raw. All kinds of jokes were made. After the plane took off, Portia could finally sleep peacefully. The seats in the first-class cabin were spacious and could be adjusted back and forth, so it was quite comfortable. However, just as Portia fell asleep, she was woken up by someone. Portia, can I switch places with you? Xianli asked. Portia felt like she was about to go crazy from being tormented by this family. But he couldn't lose his temper at the little girl. He could only change seats with Xianli. Uncle, I want to join the supernatural organization. We'll talk about it when you're of age, Chen Zhao said indifferently. But Risa is only 14 years old, and your Moore is only 17 this year. Neither of them is of age. When Xianli and Lisa met for the first time, there was a little conflict. However, the two girls were about the same age, so they soon talked about everything. Xianli had heard that there was a Tower of Trials in the supernatural organization. Only people in the organization had the right to use it. To become stronger, one had to challenge the Tower of Trials again and again. To join the supernatural organization, one had to agree with Chen Zhao. Risa was once a captive. Moore is older than me in the organization, Chen Zhao said indifferently. The supernatural organization doesn't accept people anymore, unless you have some value. Your main cultivation system is curses. Even if you were 10 times stronger, you still wouldn't be able to join the organization, let alone the current you. I can start as an outer member. If you can get into a famous university, I'll consider agreeing to your request. But studying isn't my strong suit. Then try to make it your strong suit. Chen Zhao's attitude was businesslike. Xianli stared at Chen Zhao annoyed. She wanted to become stronger. She didn't want to be as weak and powerless as before. The power that she'd once been proud of was so powerless in the face of any change. I don't want to go to university. You should know that my interest isn't in studying. I won't force any child to take the same exam. Even if you don't want to go to university, that's fine. I'm just stating my request. Accept or reject, I won't ask, Chen Zhao said matter-of-factly. Of course, you still have to go to school. After all, I don't want to be sued by the Underage Protection Association. Chen Zhao wasn't someone who only cared about grades, but he believed in one saying. Going to university could broaden one's horizons. Not to mention those who dropped out of school and succeeded. In fact, those who went to university had a higher chance of success. Chen Zhao didn't care how good his children were, or how smart they were. But at least in a situation where it was within his power, Chen Zhao didn't want their impulsiveness to affect their future. Chen Zhao also didn't care if she was a successful businesswoman, or a witch in the supernatural world. But the supernatural organization's circle was too small. If Chen Zhao asked Xinli Xing to join them now, then her future vision would most likely be limited to the supernatural organization. Even if Xinli said she wanted to travel around the world, Chen Zhao wouldn't object. One's horizons determined one's height. Even a super genius wouldn't be able to achieve anything if he was locked in a small village. He wouldn't be able to achieve anything because his horizons were only limited to the village. How about this? If you can stay in high school for 3 years, I'll give you a mana potion. If you get into a university, I'll get a list to find the curse magic book you need. If you get into a famous university, I'll allow you to join the supernatural organization. What do you think of this deal? But my grades are terrible. I can hire a teacher to tutor you. Oh right. I'll arrange for you to go to school next semester. You still have a lot of free time now. I can hire a tutor for you. Tutor? Xinli shuddered. I don't want a tutor, ever. Portia should be able to do this job. Chen Zhao murmured. Portia, who didn't know what was going on, shivered. Why do I suddenly feel cold? Is there something wrong with the cabin's temperature? Chapter 1826. On the way home. Portia, I've thought about it. I'm going to give you a raise. Portia, who was driving, jumped in fright for no reason. She almost drove Chen Zhao's new car into a ditch. Chen Zhao would never love someone for no reason, nor would he give her warmth for no reason. Most of the time, Chen Zhao would throw out a piece of meat first. Then there would be a huge hole under the meat. It had always been like this. Boss, I'm very satisfied with my current salary. Portia's expression was stiff. She was considering if she should just drive the car to the beach and die with Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao looked at Portia, who immediately averted his gaze. Boss, I'm driving. Don't disturb me. I plan to cancel your current debt in half a year. Since you don't want it, forget it. Chen Zhao turned and moved to the back. Portia was stunned. Boss, let's continue our conversation. However, Chen Zhao put on airs this time. He didn't say anything to Portia until the car entered the garage of Mingyue Villa. Boss, you said you'll cancel my debt in half a year. You have to keep your word. You might not be willing to do the work I give you. Who said that? I'm happy to do it. Xinli will start school in February next year. Her grades are a mess right now. I need you to tutor her, so she can at least reach the level of her peers. It was indeed a trap. Portia accepted the task with tears in her eyes. After returning to Mingyue Villa, some children were full of energy, while others were exhausted. Chen Zhao and Portia packed their luggage. A while later, Fei Lai came back too. Portia immediately felt like she was unnecessary. Chen Zhao and Fei Lai cuddled together, as if there was no one else around. Fei Lai, did you ask for leave today? It was only 1 in the afternoon. Fei Lai was actually back. No. L.A. issued a tide warning today. There'll be huge waves in the next few days. So Angel Beach is temporarily closed. How was your trip? Fei Lai asked. Not bad. It's just that Knots went to the hospital again. Beside her, Portia rolled her eyes. Play. Chen Zhao went to Minneapolis and stayed there for 1 night. Then he took a plane back in the morning. You call this play? But to Chen Zhao it was indeed play. Because they ran out at night. No one knew what they were going to do. If they were going to do business, then why would they bring a group of children? Is it settled? Yes, it's done. Chen Zhao nodded. Call the people from the association. Let's have a party tonight. Yes. Chen Zhao nodded. The two of them were not averse to having a party with people from the association. As long as it was still a matter of atmosphere. Everyone's level was different, so the topic of conversation was different. It was just like Stephen and David. One was a world-class director, and the other was a police officer. They were both good friends. But if they were together, David would become Stephen's fan instead of his friend. This difference in status made it difficult for them to be friends who could talk about everything. This was also why Chen Zhao only wanted to invite one group of people. Today he would gather with them. Tomorrow he would drink with them. Portia heard their conversation. He thought to himself that he had to keep an eye on the kitchen later. Let's see who's cooking dinner. Portia now had a grudge against the chefs of the Bright Moon Villa. They could finish breakfast, lunch, and dinner without a sound. He appeared without a sound and disappeared without a sound. He was always so mysterious, which made Portia's curiosity rise to the extreme. Today he had to unveil this mystery. Chen Zhao called West. Hey West, bring people to my house tonight. I'm having a party. Okay. West didn't waste any time. In the evening, a large group of people arrived at the Bright Moon Villa. Portia noticed that the kitchen in the Bright Moon Villa was completely silent. Chen Zhao and Fei Lai weren't in a hurry either. The guests were already here. Why wasn't anyone working? What were they going to eat tonight? Everyone's here, right? Chen Zhao said. Let's go to the yacht tonight. Portia was stunned. She ran to the edge of the yard and looked down. She realized that a sumptuous meal had been prepared on the Hydra. Portia was crazy. That chef, or those chefs, were they playing hide and seek with her? Portia was speechless. The children and people from the association also ran to the beach to play. Chen Zhao and West stood in the yard. President, we've chosen 2 new missions. What missions? Where are they? Enter the Russian super drill hole. Is it the deepest hole ever drilled in human history? Yes, that drill hole. The red mission was specially approved by the Russian government. Does that mean the legend is true? They really drilled into the gates of hell? Not the gates of hell, West said. They drilled into the habitat of an underground creature. The mission requirement is to kill the mother of the creature. Do you need me to go with you? Let's stick to the old rules, West said. But it's almost 10,000 meters underground. If you run into trouble, you won't even have a chance to ask for help. Chen Zhao was still worried. Danger could appear at any time in the underground world. President, it's not that serious, West said. Actually, it's a popular place for spiritualists. They often walk around the super drill hole. What about the other red mission? African cave dragon. No, you're not strong enough to deal with an adult dragon. Chen Zhao shook his head. It's too risky. No, not to kill it, but to protect it. What? What's going on? Wasn't the previous mission to kill the dragon? How did it become to protect it? No one would have thought that the barbarian's cave poisonous dragon wasn't the scourge that was entrenched there. On the contrary, he was the guardian of balance on that prairie. Because of the Scarlet Red mission, a large number of spiritualists went there and attacked him, causing him to be seriously injured. Now some unclean creatures are targeting the poisonous dragon, wanting to devour him. What will happen if Dulong dies? If Poison Dragon died, then the grass plain would lose its natural balance and become a desert, a forbidden zone for life. Therefore, for the sake of the grass plain, and to protect Poison Dragon, the Scarlet Church changed their mission from killing Poison Dragon to protecting Poison Dragon after understanding the whole story. Chapter 1827. The Hydra was moving slowly on the sea. The yacht was on autopilot. Hi, I'm Kalon. Kalon walked over to Xianli. Lisa and Mo Air also followed them. Hi, I'm Xianli. Lisa moved closer to Xianli and asked, Did the president agree? Xianli shook her head. My uncle said that he'll only let me join the supernatural organization after I finish school. These adults are all like that. They don't care about our personal will. Kalon drank depressed. Xianli looked at Kalon. You're not a member of the supernatural organization either? Kalon's father is an elite. He's the oldest member, Moore said. But there's a rule that if a member's family wants to join, both the member and the president must agree. You're lucky, Kalon said. You only need Mr. Chen to agree. Then can we join another organization? Xianli asked. Everyone looked at Xianli and couldn't help but roll their eyes. Sure, Lisa said. But the president will destroy that organization later. In all of North America, no, organization can go against the president's will. Xianli thought of the battle last night. He'd faced the 5 legendary Romani Pillar Kings. In the end, he completed a one-sided massacre. Xianli also had a new understanding of the power of the spiritual world. In the past, she'd only thought that her father was powerful. At that time, She'd thought that there was no one more powerful than her father. She'd seen her father as her idol. However, during Warren's invasion, his father finally fell in front of her. The president is a very controlling person. If you're not related to him, he won't interfere. But if you're related to him, you have to listen to his orders, Moore said. Plus, in the L.A. area, apart from the supernatural organization, there's only the psionic team. That organization is the supernatural organization's enemy. I'm sure the president will be happy to get rid of them. There are other hostile organizations in L.A. Can't Uncle deal with them directly? That's not something that can be decided by force. It's very complicated. But if the president finds an excuse, he'll get rid of the psionic team without hesitation. But my academic performance is very poor, Lee said with a sad face. If I follow Uncle's request, I won't be able to join the supernatural organization. There's a way. Go to Ruan Faxaban. Moore suddenly had an idea and said, Is he from the supernatural organization? Yes, he's our alchemist. Maybe he knows how to make some potions to increase intelligence. Which one is he? That's the guy with messy hair. Moore pointed at Ruan Faxben, who was eating and drinking on a plywood not far away. Ruan Faxi was definitely the most aloof member in the association. It was mainly because of his habit of only coming out of the laboratory once every few days. Therefore, most of the time his body carried a foul stench. It wasn't just because of the smell of his own sweat, but also because his body always carried the smell of some experimental materials. Luong, come here for a moment. Ruan Faxi looked up at Moore and the others, wiping the grease on his face on his clothes. What for? Hello, Mr. Luong, I am Lee. I know you. You're the president's adopted daughter, right? Luong. Lee wants a potion that can increase her intelligence. I wonder if you can get it. Magic potions can increase magic power directly, Ruan Faxi said. Other than magic potions that can directly increase magic power, other types of potions have the effect of fair trade. In other words, they convert your other strengths into the abilities you need. For example, the wisdom potion can increase intelligence but weaken magic power. Lee, do you want it? Everyone looked at each other. They didn't expect the intelligence potion to have such a restriction. Then why isn't the magic potion limited? Of course. What materials do magic potions need? The most important is the skeleton of a powerful magic creature. Therefore, magic potions aren't regular magic potions. They're more like supplements. Is there no other way? Lee obviously wouldn't sacrifice her magic power to increase intelligence. There is, Ruan Faxi said. The golden apple, the fruit of wisdom. You mean the golden apple in Greek mythology? Yes, it's the golden apple in Greek mythology. Ruan Faxi looked at Lee. If you can find the legendary golden apple, you'll gain wisdom. In Greek mythology, the golden apple was a gift from a tree that Gaia, the mother of the earth, brought back from the west coast as a wedding gift for Zeus and Hera. Zeus planted it in the sacred garden, and it was guarded by his 3 daughters, Aigul, Irusha, Hesperides, and the 100-headed dragon. In Greek mythology, the golden apple appeared twice. The first time was when Hercules completed the 11th of the 12 great feats, which was to obtain the golden apple under the watch of the 3 goddesses and the 100-headed dragon. The second time was during the wedding of the human hero Piraeus and the ocean goddess Thetis. Eris, the goddess of conflict and discord, didn't receive the wedding invitation. Thus, she purposely gave a golden apple to the guests and claimed that it was for the most beautiful and powerful goddess. Queen Hera, goddess of wisdom Athena, and goddess of love and beauty Aphrodite, didn't give in to each other. They all believed that they were the ones who deserved the golden apple. This golden apple eventually led to a war. Troy was destroyed by the Spartans. Can the golden apple gain wisdom? Moore asked. In Greek mythology, it doesn't say that eating the golden apple will give you wisdom. The golden apple can give you the ability you want, Ruan Faxi said. It's not limited to wisdom. It can also be your magic or other abilities. It's called the omnipotent fruit. But legends are just legends. It doesn't mean that the golden apple really exists. The Scarlet Mission includes finding the golden apple, Ruan Faxi said. Since the Scarlet Church believes that the golden apple exists, it's very likely that it does. Are there any clues? In the British Museum, there's an ancient book called the Book of Prometheus. It's said that this book records everything from the beginning to the end of Greek mythology. Chapter 1828. Stealing the Book of Prometheus from the British Museum should be more difficult than studying, right? Chen Zhao said coolly as he walked over. Chen Zhao glanced at Lisa. She was a genius girl. Plus, he and Lisa had stolen from the museum before. So Chen Zhao knew how difficult it was to steal from a museum. Chen Zhao heard the kids' secret discussion. Exionly saw Chen Zhao walk over. Clearly, he'd heard their conversation. If Chen Zhao knew, it would be difficult for her to complete the task. Lisa immediately looked away, afraid that Chen Zhao would notice something. Chen Zhao glanced at Lisa, and then at Ruan Faxben. Moore was a hothead. He was also here, but he was definitely a pawn. Moer was a rash young man. Although he was also here, he was definitely being used as a chess piece by someone else. They were definitely acting. They probably wanted to trick Xian Li into finding the golden apple. They were definitely putting on an act. They were probably trying to trick Xian Li into finding the golden apple. They were definitely acting. They probably wanted to trick Xian Li into finding the golden apple. Tricking Xian Li was different from facing Chen Zhao. Haha, I was joking. Ruan Faxben laughed loudly. Xian Li, don't take it to heart. Xian Li clearly thought that it was because of Chen Zhao. Only Ruan would say something sarcastic. Uncle, give me half a year. In half a year, I have to find the golden apple. If I can't find it, I'll go back to school. Xian Li looked at Chen Zhao seriously. After a moment of silence, Chen Zhao said, I can give you half a year, but you also have to agree to 3 of my requests. What requests? First, you have to make a phone call every day. Second, you have to carry a tracking device. Third, you can't kill anyone, Chen Zhao said. If you agree to these 3 requests, I'll give you half a year. If you refuse, you'll have to stay at home obediently. Okay, I agree. Lisa, Ruan Faxben Moore, since you 3 are so active in persuading Xian Li, follow her. Don't even think about escaping. Lisa's and Ruan's cheeks twitched. This wasn't in their plan. In fact, their goal was to influence Chen Zhao through Xian Li. They wanted Chen Zhao to be part of their plan. In the end, Chen Zhao did intervene, but not in the way they had planned. The two met Chen Zhao's eyes. There was a threatening look in Chen Zhao's eyes. The two of them could only put on a long face and admit defeat. Kellen immediately shouted, Mr. Chen, what about me? What about me? Fuck off. Go finding Elite. I have no objections if he agrees. If he has objections, then I can't do anything about it. Mr. Chen, let me go too. Help me talk to my dad. He'll definitely listen to you. Fuck off. Chen Zhao didn't want to get involved in Colin's family matters. After all, Colin not only had an elite behind him, but also his mother Amy. Moreover, there was a certain amount of risk involved in this matter. Chen Zhao couldn't influence an elite. Not even the slightest bit affected. As the saying goes, better safe than sorry. If Colin was hurt because of this, Chen Zhao would have to bear the responsibility. He didn't want to face his parents' questions. Of course, if Xian Li really wanted to go, Chen Zhao would do his best to ensure her safety. Apart from her personal weapons, Chen Zhao would also contact Mary, the 23rd generation. Mary had wanted to build a good relationship with Chen Zhao for a long time. It was just that in their first few interactions, Chen Zhao didn't have a good relationship with her. So, Chen Zhao believed that the 23rd Blood Mary would be happy to accept this task. Roar! Just then a cheer came from the stern. Klaus and an elite were standing there. They were both wearing swimming trunks, and in a diving position. We agreed that no magic is allowed, Klaus said in a low voice. I don't need magic to deal with you. Portia stood in front of the 3-story fence, and watched the commotion below. These people were really energetic. Moreover, they actually dared to swim in the sea under the night sky. Uncle and Elite, Uncle Klaus, I want to compete with you too. Jerlin ran to the two in her swimsuit, and stood at the stern. Portia was speechless. She looked left and right, trying to find Chen Zhao. She wanted Chen Zhao to control Jerlin. Wasn't that too much? It was one thing for the two adults to go into the sea at night. Jerlin wanted to join in the fun too. This wasn't Bright Moon Beach. It was the sea with strong winds and waves. Klaus and Angelite's faces darkened too. Compete with Jerlin? It would be embarrassing if they won, and even more embarrassing if they lost. Of course they couldn't lose. Unless Chen Zhao helped them cheat. But Chen Zhao was definitely too lazy to interfere. Then the two of them would cooperate with each other. Klaus and Elite, Chen Zhao said, walking to the stern. Play how you want. Don't take care of Jerlin. Jerlin was a bit lonely at home. In fact, she could swim more than she could at home. Apart from a few children and King Kong, who was afraid of water, the others could swim and weren't slower than Jerlin. But they all gave in to Jerlin. Chen Zhao didn't think that this was good for Jerlin. Dad, I won't lose. Don't cry if you lose. Just wait and see. Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. If you lose, you'll have to clear the plates later. I won't lose. I definitely won't lose. Okay, get ready. Little Jerlin, get ready. Don't talk anymore, Fei Lai ordered. 3, 2, 1, start. Jerlin's reaction wasn't slow. She grasped the timing very well. Klaus and Elite listened to Chen Zhao's words. But it was impossible for them to not go easy on her. At least, the two of them were slower than Jerlin when they jumped into the water. It was obvious. One was a seasoned veteran, while the other was an enhanced spiritualist who specialized in speed. How could they be slower than Jerlin? But if they really started swimming, they'd quickly catch up to Jerlin. This was the difference in their nature. Jerlin's physique was good, but that was only relative to children her age. It wasn't that she could be compared to adults now. Of course, in terms of swimming ability, Jerlin was indeed not worse than a regular person. Just then, a wave several meters high rose in front of Jerlin, Klaus, and Elite. Apart from Portia, everyone knew that it was Chen Zhao. Don't hurt Jerlin, Fei Lai whispered. No, I know what I'm doing. With a splash, Jerlin was slapped into the sea. Klaus and Elite hesitated for a moment, wondering if they should dive down to save Jerlin. But Chen Zhao waved his hand at the stern. Jerlin was always under his control. He even knew her condition like the back of his hand. Chapter 1829. 10 seconds later, little Jerlin suddenly came out of the water. But he couldn't figure out the direction for a long time. He looked left and right on the surface of the sea, and finally saw the Hydra not far away. But Klaus and Elite were nowhere to be seen. Little Jerlin felt her nose sting. She secretly wiped her tears. Then she swam toward the Hydra. But Jerlin couldn't catch up to the Hydra yet. Suddenly, Jerlin's feet seemed to touch something in the water. Then the thing lifted Jerlin up, so that she could stand on the surface of the sea. Amon? Ah, it's Amon! Jerlin cried in surprise. She hadn't seen Amon in a long time, although she couldn't see Amon's full appearance. Just from the touch, she could tell that it was Amon. The 5 tiger generals and the dolphin family all felt different. Only when standing on Amon's back could she feel as solid as standing on land. Portia saw Jerlin standing on the surface of the sea. There seemed to be a huge shadow moving under the water. Portia couldn't help but feel nervous. She kept staring at the shadow under Jerlin's feet. The shadow moved all the way to the stern of the Hydra, and suddenly sank into the water. Chen Zhao pulled Jerlin onto the boat. Dad, Amon's back. Amon sent me back just now. Amon? Portia's face was filled with confusion. Who was Amon? Is that the thing in the water? It felt bigger than a shark. Was it a whale? Portia was no longer surprised by Chen Zhao's whale rearing. He could even raise sharks, let alone whales. Whales were recognized as more intelligent than sharks. They were the most intelligent species in the ocean. An important factor to judge a creature's intelligence was whether it had rationality other than killing, when facing creatures weaker than itself. For example, killer whales would treat prey as toys. This was an expression of rationality. It wouldn't just treat other creatures as food. Perhaps for killer whales, simple survival was too boring. Killer whales were so powerful that they didn't need to think about food anymore. Even the largest creatures in the ocean were on their list of food. So now, they needed to think about how to improve their quality of life. Entertainment was actually a way to improve one's quality of life. After humans were no longer affected by food and the environment, They began to develop further in society. Of course, at the same time, with enough food and a stable environment, human intelligence also began to increase by leaps and bounds. From the perspective of biological evolution, this kind of evolution was natural. The orca's current intelligence, and their dominance in the ocean, were already close to the primitive social form of humans. However, the killer whale could no longer grow. This was because the development of mankind had caused them to lose the space to grow. If humans were still in a feudal society, perhaps the killer whales would have a chance. However, ever since mankind had entered the stage of technological explosion, their martial prowess had increased by tens of thousands of times. Even if the killer whales had the same intelligence as humans, they couldn't reverse this relationship. Just like the movie Rise of the Planet of the Apes, it was impossible to happen in reality. Could one or a few chimpanzees with the same intelligence as humans really overthrow the rule of humans? How was this possible? Even within the same species, humans would kill each other due to skin color, let alone another species. Of course, a movie was still a movie. It was just an artistic process, and an exaggeration of the plot. That would never happen in real life. Even if the leaders of the human army were a group of monkeys, they wouldn't lose. Actually, Amon wasn't the only one back. Little Nine was back too. Today was the monthly payday. Chun Zhao threw 2 demonic crystals into the water. The hydra stopped. Portia looked at the vast night sky. Weren't they worried about Klaus and Elite, who'd been swimming for an hour? Portia knew the two, and had been worried for them for a long time. In the end, the two swam back after an hour and a half. Without using magic, Elite might not be Klaus' match. Of course, even so, he wasn't weaker than Klaus. The difference wasn't obvious. Little Jerlin ran up to them and threatened. Uncle Klaus, Uncle Elite, I'll definitely defeat you in the future. Then Jerlin suffered from Chun Zhao's revenge. She pinched her face and flicked her nose. Little Jerlin escaped pathetically. Amon found a sunken ship at the bottom of the sea. It seems to be transporting gold. It's more than 30 nautical miles from here. What do you think? Are you interested in going? Everyone looked at Chun Zhao with shining eyes. Even Portia was a bit dazed. Sunken ship? Transporting gold? Roar. I'm going. I'm going to get rich. Lisa yelled. Treasure hunt, treasure hunt. I'm going to salvage the sunken ship. Eric was even more excited. After all, he'd just learned a sea creature form, and was worried about where to use it. He didn't expect to have a chance to use it now. The others were also very excited. Who wouldn't love gold? Fei Lai walked up to Chun Zhao. Darling, is there a lot of gold in that sunken ship? Probably more than $10 million in gold, and a lot of silver coins. The Hydra sailed toward the sunken ship. After 2 hours, the kids all went to sleep. However, the party on the ship continued. Portia couldn't help but wonder if a few of them would drown when they got into the water, considering how much they drank. We're here. This is the place. If you want to get rich, go into the water. One by one they were ready. Except for a few, the rest were wearing diving suits. Not everyone could leave the air. Portia didn't want to miss this opportunity, so she also wore a diving suit. However, the sunken ship was more than 100 meters deep. Portia couldn't go any further after diving 20 meters. She could only float to the surface depressed. Then, she looked at Chun Zhao's subordinates. They were all diving down crazily. There were even 1 or 2 who didn't even wear diving suits. They were a bunch of lunatics. Portia floated to the surface. Fei Lai pulled her up. Portia, come up, Fei Lai said, smiling. You can't beat them. Portia also realized this. Even if she wore a diving suit, she couldn't beat them. She really didn't know how they did it. Chun Zhao sat on the railing with his feet dangling outside, enjoying the sea breeze. Boss, aren't you going down to get some? You can dive down too, right? If I needed it, I wouldn't have told them the sunken ship's location. I'd run over myself and fish up all the gold and silver coins. Chapter 1830. Just then, a beam of light appeared on the surface of the sea. It was the light of a searchlight. A ship seemed to be approaching the Hydra. It was a fishing boat, but it was rather large. Its length and displacement were similar to the Hydra, but its tonnage was probably higher. The fishing boat stopped when it was about 100 meters away from the Hydra. The searchlight on the fishing boat shone on the Hydra. Just then, Chen Zhao heard the butler system's voice. Master, Meryl requests to speak to you. Meryl? That fishing boat over there? Chen Zhao thought for a moment and picked up. Hello, how can I help you? Hello, I'm Meryl's captain, Judge Bunchen Dian. The captain's voice came from the communicator. Our fishing boat is going to do salvage nearby. Can you please leave this area so that Meryl's fishing net doesn't hit your boat's propeller? It's not an open fishing ground, Chen Zhao replied. Captain Bunchen Dian, it's illegal for you to fish here, so I suggest you leave as soon as possible. On Meryl, Judge Bunchen Dian frowned. The people on the other boat really didn't know what was good for them. He'd already lowered his voice, but the other side still didn't know when to stop. Boss, we still have to use force, a rough man said. It's just a boat. What's there to hesitate about? Let's just sink it. We might even get some money. Take out all the tools and make it clean, Judge Bunchen Dian said expressionlessly. On the Hydra, Portia was shocked to see the fishing boat crash over. The yacht was made of thin steel and aluminum, different from the pure steel of the fishing boat. If it crashed over, the Hydra would definitely be cut in half. After all, it was a yacht. The hull was designed for comfort. Most of the modern fishing boats were designed to withstand the strongest winds and waves. Some boats even had the ability to break ice. As long as they were equipped with an icebreaker, they could crash into the floating ice on the surface. Get out of the way, get out of the way, Portia screamed in fear. Glancing at Chen Zhao, she said, the kids are sleeping. Chen Zhao nodded and turned to look at Meryl. Meryl had been under Chen Zhao's domain the entire time. Within a radius of 1,000 meters and on the sea, the Meryl wanted to ram the yacht, but it was obviously thinking too much. Furthermore, there were still Amon and Little Nine in the water. Portia discovered that although the Meryl had been rushing in their direction, it hadn't gotten any closer. Looking at its posture, it was clearly charging over, and the seawater was being pushed away. How could it not be close? Portia wasn't the only one who was confused. The people on Meryl were also confused. Judging from the traces of the current, their ship is indeed moving forward. But why didn't they approach the Hydra? At that moment, Gaia floated up from the sea and jumped onto the yacht. Portia saw that Gaia was holding 2 gold bricks in her hands. Portia sucked in a cold breath. Gaia, did you salvage this? Yes. Gaia took the towel from Phalai and began to wipe herself. We have enough money to buy toys for Evans. Chen Zhao and Phalai both smiled nonchalantly. Gaia was quite famous in the entertainment industry now. Plus, she had her private business and her famous fitness center. In the supernatural organization, her value was second only to Chen Zhao. Just these 2 gold bricks were really not enough to enter her eyes. They were just here for fun. Gaia looked at Meryl. What's with that fishing boat? It's probably from a private salvage company. They disguised it as a fishing boat, Chen Zhao said nonchalantly. Chen Zhao wasn't guessing blindly. The boom on the fishing boat wasn't used to pull nets. It was a lifting machine. Then, the people from the supernatural organization surfaced one after another. Portia looked at them. Each of them had 1 or 2 gold bricks on them. Her eyes were all red. She didn't have the ability, but these guys were too good at diving. Some of them didn't even need equipment to dive 100 meters deep, and then float up with 2 or 3 gold bricks. Boss, if they're from a salvage company, why are they disguised as fishing boats? Portia asked, confused. Of course, Chen Zhao said. Salvage companies have to pay heavy taxes if they salvage a sunken ship. If they launder money, they only have to pay 15 to 20% at most. If they pay taxes to the government, they have to pay at least 45%. Also, some sunken ships are involved in international disputes. It's very troublesome to sue them in international courts, so they naturally have to disguise themselves as fishing boats. He knew so clearly mainly because he knew Gurette. Gurette's main business was piracy, but she also had other businesses. Salvage companies were one of them. Most salvage companies didn't register their business. Most salvage companies were in the business of salvaging wrecks and wrecks from the 18th and 19th centuries. Both were unpredictable businesses most of the time. The cost of salvaging wrecks was low, and they might not find them. In the past, the number of wrecks wasn't high, but it wasn't low either. They had to search with all their might. They might not even find one in a year or two. Compared to the cost of searching and salvaging, the items that could be salvaged might not even cover the cost. If taxes were included, the salvage company wouldn't even be able to make a profit. Taking a risk out of desperation was their only choice. At the moment, the people on Merrill were panicking. They realized that no matter how hard they tried, the ship couldn't get close to the yacht. Even at full power, they couldn't move it at all. They wanted to escape, but they couldn't either. The entire ship stayed where it was. What do we do now? Judge Bangchen asked anxiously. He'd been in the salvage business for more than 20 years and had never seen such a strange thing. How about we ask the boss for help? One of his men suggested. Judge Bangchen Dian thought for a long time, but there was no other way. He could only ask the boss for help. Bangchen picked up the satellite phone. Boss, we've encountered some trouble. What trouble? We encountered a yacht that appeared at the location of our salvage operation. We negotiated with them, but they weren't willing to leave. Then, Bangchen Dian explained the situation to Judge Liu. Yacht? What kind of yacht? A very luxurious yacht with the Hydra logo printed on the hull. Boss, is this a Hydra organization? Chapter 1831. Hey, Guret, how come you have time to call me? Chen Zhao was surprised by Guret's sudden call. Is there news from Treasure Island? There's some progress, but we're still investigating, Guret said. Chen, where are you now? Of course. Why do you ask? At home? On the boat? Guret asked. Chen Zhao was stunned. He looked at the Merrill in the distance. That fishing boat disguised as a fishing boat is yours? It's mine, Guret answered honestly. I found it, Chen Zhao said. It's been more than half a year. Got it. I'll have them leave now. Guret wouldn't suspect that Chen Zhao was targeting her. The two were still in their honeymoon phase. They wouldn't scheme against each other over an ordinary boat. Tell them to leave this area, Chen Zhao said. Chen Zhao let the Merrill go. Portia didn't understand what the fishing boat was doing. It was going to charge over aggressively, but now it turned around and escaped. Portia didn't know. They could only escape with Chen Zhao's permission. The group of people played until dawn. Portia was so sleepy that she went to bed by herself. The next day, when Portia woke up, she saw the deck filled with gold and silver. However, everyone's share was clearly divided. Portia ate breakfast, which was as sumptuous as usual. But she still didn't see the chef. The supernatural organization didn't go into the water anymore. They'd fished out most of the gold that could be found. The rest had either sunk into the mud at the bottom of the sea, or they'd been washed away by the current. Then there was some silver. Silver wasn't very valuable. At least, it wasn't high on the market. They didn't want to waste any more time on silver. The Hydra finally returned to the ship. Other than the empty-handed Portia, everyone had a great harvest. The gold bricks all weighed 2 kilograms. Based on the current price of gold, each brick was worth $70,000 to $80,000. The gold content of these gold bricks was quite high. They should have been produced and crafted at the beginning of the last century. The more people picked up 3 or 4 gold bricks, while the less had at least one. There were more silver coins, but the price of silver was much higher than gold tea. To them, this was a huge windfall. Everyone was in a good mood. Except for Portia. Portia, don't be disappointed. This is for you. Gaia stuffed a silver coin into Portia's hand as a form of consolation. Portia felt even more stifled. Exionly, are you really going to look for the golden apple? Fei Lai had already learned from Chen Zhao, and Chen Zhao had also agreed. However, Fei Lai's current identity was Xian Li's adoptive mother. Chen Zhao still asked Xian Li to convince Fei Lai herself. Auntie Fei Lai, can you agree? Actually, Chen Zhao had already told Fei Lai some of the reasons. Fei Lai was more worried about Xian Li's safety. Fei Lai was silent for a moment. I only have one request. I'll agree to any request, Xian Li said impatiently. He looked at Fei Lai with pleading eyes. If you're in danger, call your uncle. Okay. Xian Li answered without thinking. Actually, Chen and I have been asking about the legendary Treasure Island, Fei Lai said. I hope you can come with us when we go to look for it. Xian Li hugged Fei Lai touched. She was in her rebellious phase. However, she was also the easiest to be touched. A person's intelligence usually reached its peak at around 12 years old. Adults only lacked knowledge and a healthy worldview. Chen Zhao promised Exai Li that he would let her go out for a walk. He didn't really want her to find the golden apple. Chen Zhao just wanted her to go out and build a complete worldview. Why were university students always muddle-headed for 2 to 3 years after graduating from school? It was because they couldn't build a truly complete worldview in school. This was also why people always joked that society was the best university. However, Chen Zhao's idea was that she had to go to school and train herself. School could impart knowledge and society could train her. Just then, Kalon ran in from outside, his face full of excitement. Feilai glanced at him. Kalon, what are you doing here? Ms. Feilai, where's Mr. Chen? Here, sunbathing in the yard. Kalon saw Chen Zhao lying in the yard. Sometimes, he really felt that Chen Zhao's lifestyle was like that of a cultivator. It was completely the lifestyle of a 70-year-old man. To any young person, sunbathing was unimaginable. Kalon ran into the yard again. Mr. Chen. Chen Zhao was dozing off. He pulled down his sunglasses and glanced at Kalon. What? Mr. Chen, my dad agreed. Agreed to what? Dad agreed to go find the golden apple with Exai and Li Lisa, and Mr. Luang. Angelit agreed. Chen Zhao was surprised. What about your mom? She agreed too. I see. I'll call and confirm, Chen Zhao said. Chen Zhao thought that Angelit wouldn't agree. After all, Kalon was studying at UCLA now. It wouldn't be easy for him to convince his parents. Chen Zhao picked up his phone and called Amy first. Angelit was a spiritualist, so it was more likely that he would agree. The possibility of Amy is not high. If Amy had agreed, then Angelit should have also agreed. Hey Amy, it's Chen. Mr. Chen, did Kalon go to your place? Kalon said that you agreed to let him take half a year off and go find the golden apple. Yes, I agreed, Amy answered. Why? Mr. Chen, didn't you agree to your adopted daughter too? Since you can agree, why can't I? I have my own thoughts. Chen Zhao smiled bitterly. Chen Zhao stood up. He didn't care about his children's grades. He wanted them to have a complete world view and a correct way of thinking. I think that you'll find a way to protect Kalon, Amy said honestly. It's good for him to go out. He's never really left Angelit and my side since he was young. I can't completely guarantee his safety. There's actually a certain amount of risk involved in this matter. There's no such thing as absolute safety. Even if you're at home, there's always the possibility of disaster falling from the sky. What does Angelit think? He also agreed. Actually, it was Angelit who convinced me. Chapter 1832. Chen Zhao had always wondered if the girls and boys in his family had switched personalities. It wasn't just Jerlin and Larissa, who were lively and active. Even Mara and Sindora were very active. Unlike the 11 or 12-year-old kids, these kids already had a clear understanding. Mara and Sindora were the youngest of Chen Zhao's adopted children. They still needed their parents' love. Chen Zhao and Feilai were their parents now. Chen Zhao and Feilai were their parents, so they naturally doted on them. After the first few days of discomfort, they started to show their carefree personalities. Binance was also very carefree, but he liked magic more. Binance was a water magician. Chen Zhao didn't know any, but he could control water. Therefore, he could also give Binance some advice on this point. 11-year-old Kilo had become a fitness maniac. His body hadn't finished puberty yet, but he had to do more training than an adult every day. His training was similar to that of a professional athlete. Didi was the only one in the family. She was a girl from a rich family. At least in the eyes of Asians, she was a typical girl from a rich family. She was shy and introverted. She talked to everyone carefully. She also helped take care of the other kids. Today, after Portia came, Chen Zhao gathered the kids and went straight to Mirror Lake. Mr. Chen, how come you're free today? Felwood saw the large group of kids behind Chen Zhao. They're all my kids. I brought them here mainly to let them have some requests for their bedrooms, Chen Zhao said. Okay, I understand. Felwood nodded. The main construction of the villa had reached the end. Next was the renovation. Didi held little Jerlin's hand. The other kids had already dashed out. Holding little Larissa in his arms, Chun Zhao looked at the unhurried Didi. Didi, don't you want to see your bedroom as soon as possible? It's okay. I'll be there, Didi said. Although Didira was only 12 years old, her calm personality was even more stable than Xian Li's. It wasn't that Chun Zhao didn't like Didi, but he felt that kids should be more carefree. He could even accept Xian Li's rebellious personality. Didi La, if all those rooms are taken by your younger siblings, don't cry when that time comes. It doesn't matter. There are many empty rooms in this villa anyway. Indeed, this villa was larger than the old one, and there were more bedrooms and functions than the old one. Standing in front of the villa, a few children surrounded a person, one after another, making a ruckus. That person had a look of despair on his face. He was the interior designer in charge of the renovation. It wasn't that he didn't know how to satisfy these children's requests. It was because he couldn't hear their request at all. He wanted to shout at the children to stop, but he didn't dare to. As the company's designer, he also knew that Chun Zhao was the company's super investor. They were all Chun Zhao's children, so he had to take good care of them. Okay, say it one by one. Don't be so noisy, Chun Zhao said. Xian Li, you go first. While the children were pestering the interior designer, Chun Zhao received a call. Hello, who is it? Hello, Mr. Chun. Hello, Ms. Blood Mary. Chun Zhao immediately changed his tone. Hello, I'm very happy that you called me. I'm sorry that my assistant had my phone before, so I couldn't answer your call immediately. It's okay. Mr. Chun, why are you calling me? Mary, the 23rd generation's blood, asked. Ms. Blood Mary, do you have any connections in England? What do you plan to do, Mr. Chun? My daughter wants to steal the Book of Prometheus from the British Museum. Ah, 23rd Blood Mary exclaimed. Mr. Chun, you won't be involved, right? No, Chun Zhao said. Mr. Chun, you want me to help your daughter steal the Book of Prometheus? 23rd Blood Mary was troubled. She was indeed very authoritative in Europe, but it didn't mean that she could do whatever she wanted. Moreover, England was one of the top countries in Europe in terms of national power and influence. 23rd Blood Mary's greatest influence was in the spiritual world, not the political world. Moreover, the British Museum was a national museum. Even 23rd Blood Mary couldn't help. No, Chun Zhao said. I don't plan on asking you to help either. If he needed help, Chun Zhao wouldn't ask anyone else. After all, he wasn't that familiar with 23rd Blood Mary. I just hope that you can help me monitor my daughter's group, Chun Zhao said. If there's anything exposed, help me cover it up. Of course. 23rd Blood Mary agreed without hesitation. So she was just helping to clean up some traces. 23rd Blood Mary quickly understood Chun Zhao's intentions. Chun Zhao wanted Xian Li to go out and explore, not have them seek death. Xian Li, Lan Moore, and Lisa had been together every day for the past few days. They discussed the information they'd gathered. Ruan Faxi was also actively preparing for the match. He wasn't going to find the golden apple. He was going to be a babysitter. Thinking of this, Ruan Faxi felt a headache coming on. He started regretting his stupid decision that day to encourage Xian Li to find the golden apple. In the end, he'd gotten himself into trouble too. Now he could only force himself to be a babysitter. He also had to make sure that nothing would happen to the kids. If anything happened to any of them, Chun Zhao would definitely skin him alive. After leaving Mirror Lake, Chun Zhao took the kids to Mountain Town for a walk. The residents of Mountain Town had a much better life now. Comparing the profits of the beer factory also brought them great returns. With a stable job and income, they had more money in their hands. Of course, the Mountain Town government still wanted a share of the profits from Chun Zhao. Even the fact that the Dashan beer brand was originally owned by the Mountain Town government was brought up again. Fortunately, Chun Zhao had listened to Denver and bought out the entire Mountain Beer brand. Legally, the excessive demands of the Mountain Town government couldn't be satisfied. Of course, the Mountain Town government's actions were quite shameless. But facing such huge profits, it was reasonable for the government to act shamelessly. Of course, Chun Zhao and Denver always ignored such requests. After all, they had the absolute right to speak. They could even threaten to fire the Mountain Town employees. Chapter 1833. Boss, are you familiar with the people here? Portia asked. Of course. My house is here. Of course I'm familiar. Portia realized that people would greet Chen Zhao wherever he went. It seemed that Chen Zhao really knew a lot of people. A few people sat by the flower bed across the street. They were the gangsters of Mountain Town. One of the women had a lollipop in her mouth. She looked across the street. Who's that Asian? I've never seen him in Mountain Town. He's rich. He lives by Mirror Lake. The typhoon flattened his house, and it's being rebuilt. He's living somewhere else for now, one of the gangsters said. Dash and beer is his business. Hundreds of families in the whole town have more money than him. So rich. The woman's eyes brightened. Asians should be easy to bully. We just need to scare him a little, and we can extort a lot of money from him. Please don't. He's not a normal person. No one in Mountain Town dares to offend him. One of the gangsters hurriedly stopped her. Why? He's not a big deal other than being rich. You've only been here for a few months. You don't know how scary he is. Last time, a guy went to him, and he beat him up and sent him to the ICU. Can't we just have a few more people? The woman's eyes flashed with ferocity. If we get a few more people, Mountain Town will be our territory in the future. If we throw a few Molotov cocktails at his house, I don't believe that he won't compromise. Guriel, do you want to die? The gangster glanced at the woman. I already said that we can't offend that guy. If you do, I'll back out now. Coward. Guriel's expression darkened. She was displeased that someone had humiliated her in front of everyone. I'll back out too. Me too. I don't want to go against Chen Zhao. Not every gangster in Mountain Town had interacted with Chen Zhao before, but they all knew what Chen Zhao was capable of. There were people who didn't believe him in the past 2 years, but they were all tortured to death in the end. A few people were still missing. A year ago, a gang came to Mountain Town. Dozens of people came to Mountain Town and stayed there for 2 days. Then, he heard that Mountain Town's rich man was Chen Zhao, so he brought a few people to find him. That night, the dozens of people disappeared. There was no evidence that Chen Zhao had done it. However, the residents of Mountain Town all thought that it was Chen Zhao who did it. In the blink of an eye, Gyunel realized that the hoodlum she had recruited with great difficulty actually had the same attitude on this matter. Unlike the other thugs, Nur had done everything. He had been an assassin for a gang, a mercenary, an informant for the police, and a bounty hunter. Gyunel was strong, brave, and ruthless. Seeing Chen Zhao's figure, Gurnier was even more displeased. If he could get rid of that Asian, then he would have the final say in Mountain Town. With that thought in mind, Gurnier strengthened his determination. Portia, take the kids to the car. Chen Zhao suddenly stopped and said, Take them home now. Boss, what are you doing? I suddenly remembered that I have something to do, Chen Zhao said. What is it? Why are you asking so many questions? Chen Zhao rolled his eyes at Portia. Uncle, do you need me to stay and help? Didira asked. Among all the people, only Didira knew what was going on. Chen Zhao patted Didira's head. No need. Go. Portia had a strange expression. What was Chen Zhao going to do? Didira actually asked if Chen Zhao needed her help. This family was full of strange things. Portia sent the group of children to the MPV and drove away. Didira, what's your uncle going to do? Nothing. Didira lowered her head and sank into her own world again. Xianli was also curious, but she didn't ask now. Xianli knew about Didira's specialness. Didira wasn't a witch, but she had a special bloodline. She had the legendary clairvoyance and clairvoyance. If visibility allowed, she could see a bug thousands of meters away. As long as the environment was quiet, she could hear murmurs thousands of meters away. Didira, do you need help? Xianli asked. Not really, Didira said. Didira had asked Chen Zhao if he needed help. She just pitied the woman called Gyur. That woman called Nur had obviously picked the wrong target. Suddenly, Gyur realized that Chen Zhao, whom she'd followed all the way, had suddenly separated from his kids and turned toward her. With a smile on his face, Chen Zhao stood before Gyur. Gyur's heart skipped a beat. She had a bad feeling. Gyur looked around carefully. There were no passers-by. There were no cameras here either. Gyur's plan was to attack in a more secluded place. But this place was fine too. Gear looked at Chen Zhao. I heard you're very rich. I want to get to know you. Chen Zhao rubbed his nose. I don't plan on getting to know a scumbag. Gear suddenly took out a dagger and charged at Chen Zhao. Gear wanted to use Chen Zhao to establish her dominance. She wasn't afraid of killing people on the street. There were no passers-by here anyway. Plus, her experience in the past taught her how to get rid of all the evidence. Chen Zhao's right leg flashed, and then he pulled it back. Gear felt her vision blur, and then she was sent flying. Gear spat out a mouthful of blood. She felt like all the bones in her body were broken. Gurnier endured the intense pain and panted heavily, gradually suppressing the pain in his body. Then she stood up again. Chen Zhao was surprised that the woman could still stand up after being kicked by him. Gear touched her chest. 2 of her ribs were broken. This injury wasn't easy to recover from. It wasn't that Gear hadn't met opponents stronger than her, but she could stand to the end every time. Other people didn't know, but no matter how serious her injuries were, Gear could recover quickly. She could also use her willpower to suppress the pain from her injuries. Chen Zhao also realized that Gear didn't look like she was injured. His kick hadn't been merciful. Apart from not killing her, it could basically make her wheelchair for the rest of her life. But not only did Gear stand up again, she didn't seem injured at all. In fact, her aura was even stronger than before. A spiritualist? She didn't seem to realize her identity. Chen Zhao wanted to see how much she could do. You seem to know how to take a beating. Chapter 1834. Yunel charged at him again. In the end, Chen Zhao still kicked her away. Yunel rolled on the ground in pain. This time, Chen Zhao used more strength in his attack. If she was a normal person, Chen Zhao's kick would definitely make her never walk again. But after rolling on the ground for a while, Yunel actually recovered. Gradually, Yunel stood up. She was covered in sweat, but the pain on her face was lessening. Chen Zhao tilted his head and looked at Yunel. Yunel panted heavily, and her aura grew stronger. As if venting, she punched the wall beside her. There was actually a fist mark on the concrete. This wasn't something a normal person could do. Yunel gritted her teeth and looked at Chen Zhao. I'm going to kill you. Standing where he was, Chen Zhao crooked his finger. Come. Yunel roared angrily and charged at Chen Zhao again, punching at him. Chen Zhao also raised his arm and punched back. Crack. Yunel's entire arm was crippled. Yunel took 2 steps back and touched her weak right arm. Chen Zhao had broken all the bones in her arm. The pain was indescribable. But in just a dozen seconds, Yunel's injury healed again. Chen Zhao still had a confused expression. Wasn't the speed of her recovery a little too fast? Her recovery speed was almost the same as his, right? Also, every time she was injured, she would become stronger. Where did this power come from? You can't kill me. Yunel grinned at Chen Zhao. Then I'll kill you. Ner's forte was bravery and ruthlessness. She could also turn from weak to strong every time. Because she could always drag it out until she was exhausted, she would become stronger and stronger. Smiling, Chen Zhao stood there and looked at Yunel. Looking at Chen Zhao's face, Yunel hated him even more. She charged at Chen Zhao again. But her spine was naturally broken by Chen Zhao's kick. This was almost a fatal injury. But Yunel stood up again. This time, her recovery speed was slower. But Chen Zhao realized another problem. Although Ner seemed to be stronger than before, but her face was getting paler and paler. It seemed like her recovery speed was beyond common sense. There was also a limit to his inexplicably powerful strength. Tell me, Chen Zhao asked. What's with this weird ability of yours? Gurnier's breathing became more and more rapid. She had never met an enemy like Chen Zhao. The tactics she'd used in the past to drag her enemies to death seemed to be completely useless against him. No matter how much stronger she was, Chen Zhao could still heavily injure her with one kick. Gurnier was initially full of confidence, but now he was starting to regret his recklessness. In the beginning, she dared to make a move on the street because she felt that no one could stop her. Even if the matter was exposed, the most he could do was run away. However, Chen Zhao was much more difficult to deal with than she had imagined, and Yunel knew his own family well. She did not understand how this ability came about. She could gain strength through pain. The greater the pain one endured, the greater the power and regenerative ability one would obtain. She called this power the power of pain. She had never told anyone about this. She was afraid of being caught and used as a guinea pig. However, this ability was not without its limits. The power of pain had a threshold. Once it exceeded the threshold, the power would collapse and the body would suffer unimaginable pain. Gunnir started to become nervous, impatient and angry. After this, she would definitely kill his entire family. Gunnir picked up the dagger on the ground. This time she charged forward again. This time, Chen Zhao did not move. He did not even block. Gunnir's dagger stabbed into Chen Zhao's stomach. Gunnir was overjoyed. Success! But the next moment, she realized that something was wrong. She did not feel like she had stabbed into flesh. Chen Zhao did not dodge or block. He actually wanted to know how strong Gunnir was. Gunnir looked up and saw Chen Zhao looking down at her. Chen Zhao still had a smile on his face. Gunnir stabbed again. The result was the same. Gunnir's dagger was probably as strong as an automatic rifle. Chen Zhao reached out and pinched Gunnir's mouth. Gunnir wanted to open her mouth to bite Chen Zhao's palm. Unfortunately, she could not open her mouth at all. Chen Zhao glanced around. Gunnir's heart pounded. Chen Zhao's action was exactly the same as what she had done in the past when she committed crimes. Chen Zhao dragged Gunnir into the alley. Gunnir struggled with all her might. But she could not resist at all. Chen Zhao tossed Gunnir onto the ground and stepped on her palm. Ah! Chen Zhao squatted down before Gunnir, holding up Gunnir's crushed hand. As expected, Gunnir's palm started recovering. Gunnir raised her left arm and smashed it at Chen Zhao's head. Chen Zhao did not give her a chance to attack at all. He grabbed the incoming fist and squeezed hard. Gunnir screamed again. Gunnir screamed again. However, it didn't take long for Gunnil's fist to recover. Very strong recovery, Chen Zhao said, rubbing his chin. Gunnir was in extreme pain now. She regretted it. She really regretted it. She really could not offend this guy. He was a demon. I wonder if I can recover if I remove the entire arm. Chen Zhao grabbed Gunnir's arm and was about to use force. Thinking about it, he felt that it was risky. Forget it, Chen Zhao muttered to himself. I'll just remove one finger first. Ah! Gunnir screamed again. Chen Zhao removed the middle finger from Gunnir's right hand. But this time, Gunnir's finger did not grow back. Chen Zhao tried a few more times. As long as he did not remove all her limbs from her body could recover. Of course, the recovery speed varied. Chen Zhao stood up. He found Gunnir interesting. Klaus, come to Mountain Town with the helicopter. I caught an interesting lab rat. Hearing the word lab rat, Gunnir trembled uncontrollably in fear. A sinister smile appeared on Chen Zhao's face. Are you scared of being cut up for research? Just as you thought, you will be sliced into pieces. Your blood, your skin, and your brain will all be stripped away. Gunnir struggled to escape, but Chen Zhao pressed her to the ground with one hand. She was terrified. She did not think that she would walk right into a trap and run to Chen Zhao. She wanted to use Chen Zhao to establish her dominance. In the end, she was captured by Chen Zhao as a lab rat. Right now, Gunnir wanted to cry. Chapter 1835. Gunnil was in the underworld. It wasn't that she hadn't seen evil people before. She'd even killed a few gang bosses. But now she really regretted it. This man was even more evil than her. A few people from the association came. They were all curious. Who in LA dared to offend Chen Zhao? But they regretted it after seeing it. Gunnil wasn't strong. Plus, she'd been tortured so badly by Chen Zhao. The helicopter landed at the HQ, and Gunnil was dragged down. Gunnil was in intense pain all over. The side effects of that ability had already appeared. The power of pain was spreading throughout her body. Gunnil was tough and didn't make a sound. A few people from the HQ came over. They wanted to see who Chen Zhao had brought back. Gunnil suddenly jumped up and pounced at a girl beside her. Seeing Gunnil pounce, Lisa pushed. A surge of energy burst forth from her palm. Gunnil was sent flying. Gunnil was dumbfounded. She didn't understand what had happened at all. How could a girl be so scary? Chen Zhao smiled but didn't say anything. Even if he could have stopped it just now. Even if he could have stopped her, he didn't. Apart from adieus, Everyone here could beat Ginel up. Even if it was a dooz, he still had a bunch of ferocious evil spirit followers. Chen Zhao smiled at Ginel. Stand up. Don't play dead. Ginel stood up slowly. Ginel's eyes flashed. She seemed to want to fight one last time. The people around him looked at Neil with mocking eyes. Ginel felt extremely embarrassed. What exactly do you want? You mess with me first, Chen Zhao said calmly. Ginel looked left and right. Everyone was watching the show. Everyone was watching her make a fool of herself. You're breaking the law, Ginel said after a long while. Everyone roared with laughter. Ginel was embarrassed too. In the past, it was her enemies who said this to her. But today, she was forced to say such words. If Chen Zhao cared, he probably wouldn't have kidnapped her here. Everyone here clearly didn't care about worldly laws. Even the girl who'd sent her flying had a sneer on her face. Just then Ruan Faxben walked out. Yo, President, where did you find such an ancient clan? Primordial clan? What ancient family? Chen Zhao asked, confused. To put it bluntly, he's a person of ancient bloodline, Ruan Faxben said. The most direct way to tell is his green pupils. Everyone looked at Neil's eyes. Sure enough, her eyes were green. The primordial clan originated in ancient Egypt. They were actually a branch of humans. But because they were stronger than ordinary people, they threatened the position of the rulers. In the end, they were slaughtered by ordinary humans. However, among ordinary people, there would occasionally be one or two people with atavism, Ruan Faxben said. This was the first time Neil had heard of it. The origin of his special ability. So he's special? Chen Zhao narrowed his eyes at Nur. Compared to ordinary people, of course it's special. Ruan Faxben said. But to us, they're just SOO. The primordial clan is our kind. They're not much stronger than us. Their strongest ability is to suppress pain and turn pain into power. In ancient Egypt, they formed a powerful undead army. But they don't have true immortality. They'll still die from fatal injuries. Neil understood. These weren't ordinary people either. President, give her to me, Ruan Faxben said. You like this type? Ha. I just want to use her for an experiment. After all, the primordial clan is rare. Gurnier shuddered. He looked at Ruan Faxben's messy hair, face full of stubble, and clothes that were also messy and stained. He looked like one of those perverted scientists in movies and TV dramas. Coincidentally, I want to do an experiment, Chen Zhao said. Give me a copy of the data when it's out. No, I don't want to be a lab rat. I'll agree to whatever you want me to do. I'll be your subordinate. Don't make me an experiment subject. Neil begged. Sorry, I don't need it. Chen Zhao looked at Neil with a smile. Neil pounced at Chen Zhao. She wanted to fight with all her might. But the next moment, a black chain drilled out of the ground and wrapped around Neil. Ruan Faxi pointed with his finger, and Neil was pulled to the ground. Little rat, don't mess around. Chen Zhao was surprised. One of the 4 pillar kings of the Roma had used this spell last time too. It seemed to be called Hell's Chain. But that wasn't strange. Ruan Faxi knew a lot of random spells. Just then Portia called. Hey Portia, what's up? Ms. Alex said that she needs you to go over and sign the contract. The sooner the better. Okay, I got it. Chen Zhao hung up. Glancing at the dragged Neil, he turned to leave. Ruan Faxben held the other end of the chain. Neil was completely restrained and couldn't use any strength. Do you know a Fuman? Ruan Faxben asked. Gurnier's footsteps paused, and his expression changed. Where did you hear that name? So you do. Is she okay now? Ruan Faxben's tone was indifferent, but there was also some nostalgia in his tone. Who are you? Neil asked. But at the next moment, Gurnier suddenly felt the chains on his body tighten, and his feet seemed to break free from gravity as he floated up. Holding the chain, Ruan Faxben said indifferently, Keep your voice down. Who exactly are you? Who I am is none of your business. Is a Fuman in Los Angeles? She disappeared. She disappeared 10 years ago. Disappeared. Ruan Faxben narrowed his eyes and turned to look at Neil. How did she disappear? Missing is missing. How would I know how she went missing? You'd better keep your arrogance and rudeness to yourself. Anyone here can kill you. Ruan Faxben's tone was rather cold. Just then, the door beside the corridor opened. Gunil saw a girl in black walk out of the door. Looking through the crack in the door, he saw a few skulls in the room. Helis glanced at Gunil indifferently, and then at Ruan Faxaben. "You're disturbing me." "I'm sorry, Helith." Ruan Faxi was a little respectful towards Helith at first. Helis's gaze fell on Neil. "Very good material. Ruan, how about giving her to me?" "Sorry, she's the president's trophy. He asked me to experiment on her." Chapter 1836. When Gunil faced Helith, he felt a chill down his spine. The girl looked young, but there was a hair-raising, awe-inspiring aura between her brows. Helith had a pitiful expression and licked her lips. "What a pity. If only I could turn her into a specimen." "You know the ancient family too?" "Yes, I've met one before," Helith said. "Huh. There are very few ancient families now. Where did you meet one?" "Wydak." "Where? How come I've never heard of it?" "An island in the Atlantic Ocean," Helith said. With that, she turned to leave. After a few steps, she looked back at Gunil. "Ruan, can you give her to me after you've finished your research?" Gunil's expression was unnatural. "Specimen?" The girl said she wanted to turn her into a specimen? "Go talk to the president." Ruan Faxaben left with Gunil. Gunil was terrified. She was brought into a lab. Then the chains on her body were loosened. "Don't think about escaping. No one can escape from here," Ruan Faxaben said. "Plus, you've offended the president." Gunil didn't care. So what if she did? At most, she would die. Of course, it would be best if she didn't die. "When did Alman go missing?" Ruan Faxaben asked again. "What's your relationship with Afuman?" "Afuman used to be my student," Ruan Faxaben said. Ruan Faxaben said. "But she left my side 25 years ago. And then there was no trace of her. If I hadn't met you today, I would have almost forgotten that I had such a student." Ruan Faxaben looked at Afuman. "You're her daughter?" Gunil didn't speak. Ruan Faxaben waved his hand. "Draw some blood." Gunil stared at Ruan with a dark expression. "You think I'll cooperate?" "You should. After all, you can stay alive for Afuman's sake. But if the president does it himself, you might be in a wheelchair for the rest of your life." Ruan Faxaben glanced at the missing finger on Gunil's right hand. Thinking of Chunjiao, Gunil was shocked. In the end, he picked up the syringe and drew some blood. "And some of your skin and flesh." Gunir was furious, but he could only compromise in the end. "When did Avelman go missing?" 10 years ago. Gunil watched as Ruan Faxaben conducted an experiment that she couldn't understand while talking to her. "You weren't an adult then, right?" Ruan Faxi asked casually. Gunil's face gradually turned cold. She obviously didn't want to talk more about Afuman. After all, because of her mother's disappearance, she had no one to rely on when she was underage. Her current personality, to a large extent, was formed during those years. In the United States, the government sold everything, including land, islands, and oceans. Of course, it was the same for every country. When Chun Zhao arrived at Alex's law firm, he realized that Alex had called the people from the Land and Resources Bureau over. The Land and Resources Bureau sent a small team of 4 people and a lawyer. They weren't here to negotiate, they were here to sell. In fact, Alex and her team had already negotiated the price for Chun Zhao. The people from the Bureau of Land and Resources didn't care why Chun Zhao was buying an ocean, even though Chun Zhao said it was for breeding. But they wouldn't believe him. Anyway, they wouldn't care. But then again, since Chun Zhao was willing to buy 100 square kilometers of ocean, he might be willing to buy even larger ones. The rules of the Bureau of Land and Resources for selling the ocean were that it couldn't be a sea route or the habitat of a single species, especially an endangered species. It couldn't be polluting. If a ship, person, or plane crashed in the ocean, the rescuers or teams had the right to enter the area. Anyway, there were a lot of messy conditions. When these people saw Chun Zhao, they started to brag about the huge economic value of the sea. To them, it wasn't easy to meet an idiot, especially one who had money but nowhere to spend it. So they really hoped that the idiot would buy more. The sea area of the United States was so large, and most of the sea areas, except for a small number of coastal fisheries, were basically empty and had no economic value. So if someone was willing to buy, they were obviously willing to sell. Unfortunately, Qinzhou didn't need such a large area at all. After all, Nanqi Island was only so big. It was at most 10 square kilometers. If the island was to be reclaimed and expanded in the future, it would at most be 20 or 30 square kilometers. It wouldn't be any bigger. Qinzhou didn't need such a large area. Buying an extra inch would be a waste. Qinzhou was already willing to buy 100 square kilometers. Actually, 50 square kilometers was enough. So, Qinzhou wouldn't buy a single cent more. The people from the Bureau of Land and Resources were helpless. They couldn't persuade Qinzhou. Right now, it wasn't a seller's market, but a buyer's market. If Qinzhou didn't buy it, they would be in big trouble. Originally, Alex had expected to buy the ocean for 5 million, but in the end, she forcefully lowered it to 2 million. Of course, she would get a cut of the money she saved. Alex kept asking Qinzhou about it. Why did he want to buy the ocean? But Qinzhou still wouldn't tell her. Alex was very helpless. She didn't believe that Qinzhou really had too much money and nowhere to spend it. But she still didn't understand the value of the ocean. Was there some natural mineral deposit in the ocean? Even if there was, Qinzhou couldn't touch the mineral deposit. That wasn't something Qinzhou could do. Even if the ocean belonged to Qinzhou, he couldn't do this business. The mineral deposit business had long been controlled by the various giants. Even the richest man in the world would be beaten up if he got involved in the mineral deposit or energy industry. Not to mention Qinzhou. Every industry had its own rules. For example, in the beer industry, Dashan Beer was now a local giant. If a new person entered the picture, Qinzhou would also attack. Just like how Dashan Beer had been attacked in the past. But the beer industry was relatively mild. Most of the time, it wouldn't use extreme competition. The energy and mineral industries, on the other hand, were pretty much a bloodbath. Just look at the massacres caused by the big companies in Africa and South America. They even started wars. For example, the YLK War. To put it simply, it was a war of energy. Chapter 1837. As soon as Qinzhou walked out of Alex's law firm, 2 bodyguards in black approached him. Mr. Chen, we were sent by Ali Rodriguez Alexander. She hasn't been feeling well recently. We hope you can take a look at her. With that, one of the bodyguards handed Qinzhou a check. Sure. Qinzhou looked at the number on the check and agreed without hesitation. Qinzhou was indeed very rich now. But capitalists were greedy and insatiable. Ali Rodriguez Alexander gave him a price he couldn't refuse. Qinzhou went to Ali Rodriguez Alexander's luxurious manor without hesitation. Rydra returned to Ali Rodriguez Alexander's side. The last time Qinzhou saw her, she was still in prison. Ali Rodriguez Alexander was sitting on the same chair as when they first met. Rydra nodded slightly at Qinzhou. It was a greeting to Qinzhou. Mr. Chen, hello. We meet again. Hello, Ms. Alexander. Qinzhou sat beside Ali Rodriguez Alexander. Are you feeling unwell this time? The last time I woke up after being in a coma for 3 days, I felt that I couldn't sleep. Recently, I needed about 48 hours to fall asleep, and the sleep time was very short. I went to the hospital to see a doctor, and the doctor said that it might be a physiological disorder caused by the hormone drugs used during the coma, or it might be because the toxins are still in the body. At present, the hospital can't give an accurate answer. Ms. Alexander, have you had any episodes recently? Are these the symptoms of ALS you mentioned? I don't think so. Ali Rodriguez Alexander stared at Qinzhou. She wasn't sure if she had fully recovered. After all, ALS was a disease that was hard to detect and prevent. Once it was discovered, it might be in the middle or late stages. Ali Rodriguez Alexander's current state was also very strange. It didn't matter if she was fine or not. Qinzhou also wanted to see how Ali Rodriguez Alexander was doing. After all, in order to expel the poison from her body, Qinzhou had fed her the perfect crystal mixture and injected a bit of immortal power. Qinzhou wasn't sure what would happen if immortal power entered a normal person's body. Qinzhou checked Ali Rodriguez Alexander's body. That wisp of immortal power was still in Ali Rodriguez Alexander's body. It hadn't been consumed, but it hadn't strengthened either. Chen Zhao was surprised. He didn't expect the immortal power to still be there. One must know that this trace of immortal energy was as insignificant as a matchstick. But immortal power actually existed in Ali Rodriguez Alexander's body. The immortal power wasn't constantly maintained in Ali Rodriguez Alexander's dantian, but automatically circulated in her body. It was this trace of immortal power that kept Ali Rodriguez Alexander in a state of excitement. "It's fine," Chen Zhao said. "Since you can't sleep, then sleep less. Don't take any tranquilizers. Your body is fine, so don't worry." Hearing that, Ali Rodriguez Alexander heaved a sigh of relief. Chen Zhao realized that the wisp of immortal power was not ordinary qi. It was more like a key that unlocked a certain switch in Ali Rodriguez Alexander's body. Chen Zhao fell into deep thought. Ali Rodriguez Alexander's potential should have been unlocked by the immortal power. According to current scientific inference, there is some kind of switch in the human body. Once this switch was turned on, one would be able to surpass ordinary people. All the attributes of the body would increase. Chen Zhao thought of Nur, the primordial family. Could the primordial family be the evolved version of humans? If the immortal power in Ali Rodriguez Alexander remained, would she evolve into the primordial family? "Mr. Chen, what are you thinking about? Is there something wrong with my body?" "Ah, sorry," Chen Zhao said. "I was distracted. Don't worry, you're very healthy. Even healthier than I expected. Is it really okay?" Ali Rodriguez Alexander was still a bit worried. After all, Ali Rodriguez Alexander was already at the age of knowing her destiny. However, her body was uncharacteristically excited, her appetite increased, and her athletic ability increased. If she was a young person, she definitely wouldn't think too much. But now Ali Rodriguez Alexander was an old woman. She wondered if this was the final radiance of a setting sun. Rydra had also examined Ali Rodriguez Alexander. She also realized that Ali Rodriguez Alexander was a bit too healthy. Thus, she didn't dare to jump to conclusions. That was why she suggested Ali Rodriguez Alexander find Chen Zhao. If there was a doctor in the world that Ali Rodriguez Alexander could trust, it was undoubtedly Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao's answer was the same as Rydra's. Ali Rodriguez heaved a sigh of relief. Now in Rydra's eyes, Chen Zhao was the most authoritative person. Ali Rodriguez Alexander wanted Chen Zhao to stay for dinner, but Chen Zhao still refused. Ali Rodriguez Alexander walked Chen Zhao to the door. Chen Zhao glanced at the manor and said, "Go somewhere else. This place is good, but the air quality is average." Of course, Chen Zhao was just being perfunctory when he said the air quality was average. What Chen Zhao was really dissatisfied with was the thin spiritual energy here. If Chen Zhao fought with others here, his endurance would decrease by at least half. The air quality here is average, but the greenery here is great. It's relative. You can find a better place. Chen Zhao didn't explain further. If it was a normal client, Chen Zhao wouldn't even bother to say so much. For a normal person, moving was a big deal. But for Ali Rodriguez Alexander, moving was just a matter of a word. Chen Zhao thought of the land that Stephen had bought. That piece of land was really good with feng shui. "Mr. Chen, do you have any recommendations?" Chen Zhao shook his head with a smile. "I'm not good at this, but it's easy to tell if a place has good air quality." "Like Mr. Chen's Minghua Villa?" Ali Rodriguez Alexander said, smiling. "Your place is really hard to leave." Ali Rodriguez Alexander could clearly feel the obvious difference between her manor and Chen Zhao's Minghua Villa. Ali Rodriguez Alexander thought that it was because of the environment. The view was wide and the sea breeze blew. The air from the sea was unpolluted. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.